Chapter 451. The design drafts were stolen, so they had to redesign. If they didn't redesign quickly, the spring clothes would be on the market soon, and the factory wouldn't be able to produce the goods. This matter was more than just a little troublesome. Ning Shu rubbed his forehead. The previous elements couldn't be used. Ning Shu guessed that the design drafts were in the hands of someone else. The designer worked overtime to redesign, and Ning Shu basically didn't sleep at night to review the design drafts. Ning Shu wasn't a professional designer after all. If he gave too many opinions, he would interfere too much with the designer. Ning Shu sometimes proposed a concept or element for the designer to use. After Ning Shu drank a cup of coffee, he rubbed his dark eyes and received a call from the head of the detective agency. When he arrived at the coffee shop, Ning Shu saw the coffee and felt a little thirsty, so he gulped down a cup of coffee first. "Head, gulp, what did you get this time?" Ning Shu asked. The head pushed the laptop in front of Ning Shu and clicked on the enter key. Ning Shu looked at the screen and saw two white bodies rolling together. Zhang Jiasen's expression was happy and evil, while Shui Manman's face was full of enjoyment. It was like two snakes entangled together, making Ning Shu feel disgusted. Looking at the time of the video, it was indeed that afternoon. In the afternoon, he was with Shui Manman, but in the evening, he told her that he wanted to have a baby. Hee. Ning Shu looked at the video indifferently, and after a while, a shameful sound was heard. The coffee shop was relatively quiet, and the sudden shameful sound made everyone in the coffee shop look at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately closed the laptop. With this, victory was basically in his hands. The head pulled out the USB from the laptop and handed it to Ning Shu, saying, "This is what you wanted." Ning Shu put away the USB, nodded and said, "Okay." Ning Shu made several copies of the USB flash drive's contents and placed it in the bank's safe. After a period of accumulation, Ning Shu found that he had more and more evidence in his hands. He was like a little squirrel, accumulating pine cones bit by bit. However, now was not the time to ask for a divorce. It was better to act up together. Ning Shu returned to the factory. As soon as he entered the office, he heard wailing and howling. He walked in and saw Zhang Jiasen's mother sitting on the ground. She slapped the ground and shouted, "Damn it! How can there be such a ruthless wife?" She even sent her brother-in-law to the police station. Many workers gathered around Zhang Jiasen's mother and whispered to each other. Not only was Zhang Jiasen's mother there, but Zhang Jiasen's sister, Zhang Wenlan, was also there. Zhang Wenlan was crying, and Zhang Jiasen's father was sitting on a chair with a pale face. Seeing Ning Shu coming over, Zhang Jiasen's mother immediately rushed over to Ning Shu. "You black-hearted man, why did you put your brother-in-law in jail? Sister-in-law, I beg you, let Heyu come back." Zhang Wenlan knelt down in front of Ning Shu. "He has 1,000 faults, but he is also my husband. If he goes to jail, how can we live? Daughter-in-law, this is a family matter. How can you make a scene like this? If there is a problem, go home and solve it. Don't wash your dirty linen in public. You have lost the face of the Zhang family." Zhang Jiasen's father's face was not good. His honest and mellow face was fierce, and his aura was similar to Zhang Jiasen's. He had the absolute majesty of the head of the family. As soon as Ning Shu walked in, he welcomed the storm of Zhang family members. Ning Shu's face did not change. He first drove the onlooking workers to work, closed the office door, and said indifferently, "What are you doing? Sister-in-law, I beg you, don't put my child's father in jail. Without my child's father, how can we live?" Zhang Wenlan cried and begged Ning Shu, as if the sky was falling down. Ning Shu calmly took a sip of coffee. "Can't live? There was no such a lazy man who did not support his family. Can't live without a man. Can't live without a man." This was a woman's sorrow. No matter how much of a bastard the man was, she can't live without him. She did not have the confidence and courage to live for herself. Ning Shu looked at the pitiful Zhang Wenlan. A pitiful person must have a hateful side. Zhang Wenlan had already lowered herself to the ground. There was always so much malice towards women in this world. Meow meow meow, if you don't let your brother-in-law out, I will not let you off. Zhang Jiasen's mother gritted her teeth and said to Ning Shu, you are simply disgraceful. How can you do such a thing and send your own family member to jail? Do you know what Tan Heyu did? He stole the company's design and sold it for money. He caused the company to lose at least 1,000,000 yuan, Ning Shu said calmly. Zhang Jiasen's father said, even if that is the case, you should tell your family that you shouldn't do this. Old Zhang's family will not have such a scandal. You did not even care about your husband. Ning Shu smirked and said, Jiasen also agreed to this matter. If there is anything, go and find Jiasen. Jiasen would not do this. It must be because you insisted on doing this. Zhang Jiasen's mother pointed at Ning Shu. Her finger almost poked Ning Shu's nose. Get out, I need to work. If there is anything, we can talk about it at night, Ning Shu said coldly. Zhang Jiasen's mother refused to leave and insisted that Ning Shu get her son-in-law out. Ning Shu was very impatient and directly asked the security to get her out. Zhang Jiasen's mother cried and shouted at everyone at the gate of the factory. She muttered about her heartless daughter-in-law and so on. Zhang Wenlan knelt at the gate and cried and cried. It was like this for a few days. Ning Shu knew that Zhang Jiasen's mother wanted to use public opinion to make her compromise. However, Ning Shu did not care at all. The employees of this factory relied on the Miao family for a living. Would they offend their own boss for someone they did not know? Zhang Jiasen had not shown up since the incident. He only called Ning Shu and said that he would apologize on behalf of his mother. His mother was just too worried about his brother-in-law and he would do his best to persuade his mother. However, Zhang Jiasen's mother was punctual like the workers at the gate of the factory and cried. Compared to the unreasonable Zhang Jiasen's mother, Zhang Wenlan took the weak route. She knelt on the ground and cried silently. Sometimes, she even brought her daughter to kneel with her. Ning Shu did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, he did not care and did not ask. If they wanted to make a scene, then let them. Moreover, Zhang Jiasen's attitude towards this matter was laissez-faire. With Zhang Jiasen's ability, how could he not be able to persuade his mother? How could he not have the ability to get Tan Heyu out? Zhang Jiasen deliberately let his mother and sister embarrass her in front of the employees and damage her dignity. Ning Shu only sneered and ignored these people. The more he ignored them, the higher they jumped. Chapter 452. However, after several revisions, the design was finally ready. The factory could finally produce spring clothing. Miao Ying's father also found out about what happened to Zhang Jiasen's mother. As soon as Ning Shu returned home, Miao Ying's father said to Ning Shu with heartache, "Why didn't you tell us about this? This family is a bastard. If I had known beforehand, I would never have married them." Miao Ying's mother was so angry that she was trembling. Miao Ying's father looked even worse. His face turned purple with anger. Ning Shu immediately felt that something was wrong when he saw Miao Ying's father like this. He quickly tried to calm him down. Seeing that Miao Ying's father was about to have high blood pressure, Ning Shu quickly shouted to Miao Ying's mother, "Mom, go and find a needle." Miao Ying's mother also noticed that something was wrong with Miao Ying's father. She found a needle and handed it to Ning Shu. Ning Shu directly inserted the needle into Miao Ying's father's hand. When he pulled out the needle, blood splashed out. Miao Ying's father's blood pressure stopped rising. His face didn't turn as blue as before. Miao Ying's mother was shocked. "Old man, are you okay?" Miao Ying's father felt very dizzy. He lay on the sofa and gasped for breath. Ning Shu massaged his father's hand. Miao Ying's mother took a wet towel and wiped Miao Ying's father's face. Her eyes were watery. Ning Shu furrowed her brows tightly. Recently, she had been busy with the design drafts, which made Ning Shu feel mentally and physically exhausted. It was very late when they got home. Miao Ying's mother took care of Miao Ying's father's diet. After a while, Miao Ying's father recovered. He said sadly, "I'm old and useless." "Dad, have you eaten the medicinal diet I told you to eat?" Ning Shu asked. "Yes, I've been watching her eat every day," Miao Ying's mother said immediately. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and said, "Dad, trust me. I can handle it. Don't worry." Miao Ying's father smiled with relief. "Seeing how strong you are, I won't have any regrets even if I die now." Ning Shu slowly massaged Ning Shu's father while thinking about something. Miao's father looked at Ning Shu, wanting to say something, but hesitated. "Dad, if you have something to say, just say it." Miao's father hesitated for a moment before he said, Miao, tell me, do you love Zhang Jiasen so much that you only want Zhang Jiasen for the rest of your life?" Ning Shu smiled. "No one can't live without someone." Miao Ying's father looked a little better. He said to Ning Shu, "It's late. Go to sleep. Dad is fine." Ning Shu nodded and said to Mr. Miao, "Dad, you must take good care of yourself. I can live without Zhang Jiasen, but I can't live without you." Miao Ying's father smiled and patted Ning Shu's back. "My precious daughter." Ning Shu took a shower and called Zhang Jiasen while lying on the bed. The first thing he said was, "Zhang Jiasen, let's get a divorce." Miao, what's wrong?" Zhang Jiasen's voice was trembling, as if he was forcibly suppressing it, giving people a feeling of shock and sadness. Ning Shu crossed his legs on the bed and picked his earwax with an ear pick. He said indifferently, "I just found out that your parents don't like me very much. Your mother comes to the factory every day and curses me to die every day. Don't say that I'm your family. If your mother really treated me as her family, would she curse me? She said that I'm black-hearted and should be struck by lightning. She's my enemy. I just found out that marriage is a matter between two families." My dad was so angry that he almost had high blood pressure. Ning Shu said directly, "So, let's get a divorce." "Dad, is Dad okay?" Zhang Jiasen asked quickly, "Has he been sent to the hospital?" Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "No. Fortunately, Dad survived." Zhang Jiasen sighed and said repeatedly, "It's good that he's okay. Let's get a divorce, Zhang Jiasen." "I'm serious." Ning Shu said coldly. Zhang Jiasen quickly said, Miao, don't be like this. Please, I apologize to you on behalf of my parents. They are just too worried about brother-in-law. And, I know. That's why I can see that your mother doesn't like it very much. Okay, I'm hanging up. I'm going to sleep." Ning Shu turned off the phone. The next day, when Ning Shu went to the factory, Zhang Jiasen's mother and elder sister were nowhere to be seen. They were used to wailing like at a funeral. This kind of silence made Ning Shu a little uncomfortable. See, as soon as she said divorce, Zhang Jiasen immediately retracted his clause. With Zhang Jiasen's ability, he must have a way to appease his parents and elder sister, but he didn't take any action. Walking into the office, Ning Shu was hugged by a person who smelled strongly of smoke. Ning Shu wanted to push Zhang Jiasen away, but Zhang Jiasen hugged him even tighter and shouted hoarsely, Miao. Ning Shu pushed Zhang Jiasen away. Zhang Jiasen's expression was a little stunned. He seemed to have not slept all night. His eyes were bloodshot, stubble was coming out, and his shirt was very wrinkled. Miao, don't be stubborn, okay? Zhang Jiasen's expression was very painful. How can you deny the feelings between us? Feelings my ass. Ning Shu really wanted to spit on Zhang Jiasen's face. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen with a very indifferent expression and said lightly, "Jiasen, can you wait until I finish my work before saying these things? Do you know that I'm very tired? Your family makes me even more tired. Let's calm down." Ning Shu ignored Zhang Jiasen's painful expression. With Zhang Jiasen here, Ning Shu was too lazy to go to work, so he directly turned and left. Zhang Jiasen caught up with Ning Shu and grabbed Ning Shu's arm. "Meow meow, don't do this to me. You said that you wanted a divorce because you were angry, right?" Ning Shu shook off Zhang Jiasen's hand. "I said let's calm down. You're annoying me. Do you know that I can't bear your mother anymore? Are you going to force me now?" Zhang Jiasen's eyes flashed with a gloomy look. He pursed his lips and said, okay, meow meow, don't be angry." Zhang Jiasen took a deep breath and said, "I'll take you back." Ning Shu shook his head and drove to the bank to take out the things in the safe. These things should be known to Meow Meow's father, so that they could deal with Zhang Jiasen together. When Ning Shu returned home and was about to pour water in the kitchen, he found Mrs. Ping putting something into the medicine soup. "What are you doing?" Ning Shu reached out and grabbed Mrs. Ping's arm to pull her away, preventing her from destroying the evidence by breaking the pot. Mrs. Ping was startled by Ning Shu. Obviously, she did not expect Ning Shu to come back so suddenly. She pulled Ning Shu's hand and tried to break free. Ning Shu directly pulled Mrs. Ping into the living room. Mrs. Ping's face was pale. "Miss, what are you doing? Let me go. What's going on?" Mrs. Meow came downstairs. Ning Shu said with a cold face, "Mom, call the police." Mrs. Ping put poison in the medicine soup. "Madam, I didn't." Mrs. Ping shook her head quickly. Mrs. Meow was shocked. "How is that possible? Mrs. Ping has been in the Meow family for years." Ning Shu asked the other two servants to hold Mrs. Ping and then went to the kitchen to get the pot. He said to Mrs. Meow, "I want to take this to the hospital for testing. Don't let her go until I come back." Chapter 453. Ning Shu blamed himself. He had been busy with the design drafts and hadn't paid attention to Mr. Meow's health. In addition, Tan Heyu had stolen the design drafts, which made Ning Shu even more busy. Ning Shu arrived at the hospital and handed the medicine to the laboratory to see if it was poisonous. Ning Shu sat on a chair in the corridor of the hospital and waited for the test results. The person who put something in Mr. Meow's medicine was obviously targeting Mr. Meow. Ning Shu took a deep breath and thought slowly. If something happened to Mr. Meow's father, who would benefit? Zhang Jiasen would benefit both in the short term and the long term. Mr. Meow's father had been checking the accounts recently. If something happened to Mr. Meow's father, the audit would be left unsettled. At this time, the company would have to rely on Zhang Jiasen. It was similar to the plot development. Mr. Meow's father's death in the plot must have something to do with Zhang Jiasen. The death of the Meow family was Zhang Jiasen's masterpiece. What a cruel and vicious wolf. The test results came out. It wasn't poison, but something called diclofenac. It was an anti-fever, analgesic, and anti-inflammatory drug. However, long-term use would inhibit the dilation of blood vessels and the drainage of sodium, which would cause blood pressure to rise. Mr. Meow's father had a high constitution. If he ate this kind of thing, especially with the high blood viscosity, his blood flow would accelerate and his blood pressure would rise. It would be easy for him to have a cerebral hemorrhage or stroke. And they couldn't find anything. No wonder Mr. Meow's father was so strange that day. Ning Shu pursed his lips. How could there be such a vicious person in the world? Ning Shu asked the doctor to write a list. When he returned home, Mr. Meow and Mrs. Meow were waiting for him. Ning Shu told them the test results. "Why did you do this?" Mrs. Meow pointed at Mrs. Ping. "How can you be so vicious and kill people?" Miao Ying's father touched his chest with a look of lingering fear. He looked at Aunt Ping sharply and sneered. You raised such a thing. Aunt Ping, I sponsored your son's college tuition. Is this how you repay me? Mrs. Ping's face was pale as she bit her lips without saying a word. Ning Shu faintly said, There's nothing to say to such a heartless person. Call the police and let them interrogate her. When Aunt Ping heard what Ning Shu said, her body trembled. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't do it on purpose. She kept apologizing, but didn't say why she had done it. Ning Shu directly called the police. After a while, the police came. Ning Shu filed a case and Aunt Ping was arrested. Even at this time, Aunt Ping still refused to give in. After what happened to Auntie Ping, Mother Miao saw that the other servants were suspicious and vigilant. She didn't let them touch the kitchen anymore. Mother Miao even did the grocery shopping herself. Ning Shu handed the evidence he took from the bank to Mr. Miao and said, Dad, I want to divorce Zhang Jiasen. But we can't let him off so easily. He must have something to do with what happened to Auntie Ping and the design drafts. Miao Ying's father looked at the evidence, especially when he saw the USB flash drive. His face turned purple. Ning Shu quickly tried to calm Miao Ying's father down. Dad, don't be angry. At least we found out now. Ungrateful bastard, Mr. Miao said fiercely. Miao Yi's father said fiercely with a fierce look on his face. Miao Yi's father had climbed up step by step, so he understood what Zhang Jiasen was thinking. Ning Shu had a plan in mind. If he directly asked for a divorce, Zhang Jiasen might ask for a share of the property. Ning Shu wanted Zhang Jiasen to have nothing and never be able to turn over a new leaf. Zhang Jiasen didn't have any of these. What Zhang Jiasen had worked so hard to have would be far away from him. Divorce, we must divorce. Mrs. Miao slammed the table. We can't just let it go. Mom, I know. Don't worry. Ning Shu said lightly. Ning Shu went to the police station to see Auntie Ping. If he could get Auntie Ping's statement against Zhang Jiasen, then Zhang Jiasen would not only be guilty of corruption but also instigating others to commit a crime. Ning Shu dared to bet on Miao Miao's head that Zhang Jiasen had something to do with this matter. When he arrived at the police station, Ning Shu met Zhang Jiasen. What was Zhang Jiasen doing at the police station? Ning Shu saw Zhang Jiasen walk over and asked, Why are you here? Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu gently and said, I'm here to see brother-in-law. Sigh. Zhang Jiasen didn't know what to say. He just sighed and rubbed his forehead. He said to Ning Shu, This time, we must teach brother-in-law a lesson. Next time, he will make a bigger mess. Ning Shu didn't comment. Wasn't this a big mess? Wasn't stealing design drafts a big deal? Tan Heyu was already a bad person. Zhang Jiasen asked Ning Shu, What are you doing here? Ning Shu said lightly, Auntie Ping poisoned father's medicine and is now locked up. Zhang Jiasen's pupils shrunk. He looked shocked. Poisoned? She can't be that serious. Ning Shu's eyes swept across Zhang Jiasen's face. There was only shock and confusion on his face. There wasn't a trace of panic. We will find out why she did this. Ning Shu said lightly. He walked around Zhang Jiasen and was about to go in. Zhang Jiasen turned around and followed behind Ning Shu. Miao Miao, let me go with you. No need. Only one person can visit. Ning Shu quickly left. Zhang Jiasen looked at the woman's back with treacherous eyes. He pursed his lips and pulled the tie around his neck. Ning Shu walked into the police station and looked at Auntie Ping, who was dressed in prison clothes, through the bars. It hadn't been long, but Auntie Ping looked much older. She was no longer the capable servant of the Miao family. She looked desperate. Ning Shu picked up the phone. Auntie Ping hesitated for a moment. She sat opposite the thick glass and picked up the phone. Mississippi, tell me. Who made you do this? Ning Shu asked directly. There must be a price worth taking for someone to do such a thing. This was murder. Auntie Ping held the phone and shook her head without speaking. You have to think carefully. What you did is murder. You poisoned my father's food. That is intentional murder. Ning Shu looked at Auntie Ping sharply. Did the Miao family not treat Auntie Ping well? Did they mistreat Auntie Ping? No. But Auntie Ping could do such a thing. People were so greedy and insatiable. Auntie Ping's face turned paler. She looked very dispirited. She said, I didn't want to kill anyone. But you wanted to kill my father. Ning Shu said coldly, you have to think carefully. Your son is about to graduate, but he has a mother who is a murderer. What future do you think your son has? Your son will hate you for the rest of his life. Auntie Ping's face was pale and her body was trembling. Her son was obviously Auntie Ping's weakness. She begged Ning Shu. This has nothing to do with my son. Please don't hurt him. Chapter 454. Mrs. Ping cared a lot about her son. When she heard Ning Shu talk about her son, she kept begging Ning Shu, saying that this had nothing to do with her son and that he shouldn't hurt him. Ning Shu looked coldly at Aunt Ping, who was acting like a loving mother. She only felt that it was funny. What right did she have to beg others? You told me not to hurt your son, but you didn't think that your actions would hurt my father. If something really happened to my father, you told me not to hurt your family, but you're hurting mine. Ning Shu couldn't stand Mrs. Ping acting like this. She acted as if everyone else was the bad guy and she was the one hurting others. Ning Shu said coldly, I remember that your son is about to graduate. I'll make sure he can't stay in this city unless you tell me who told you to do this. Mrs. Ping's tears made her face look even older and more desperate. However, Ning Shu didn't feel any sympathy for her. The plot didn't mention Mrs. Ping. This person who had worked for the Miao family for so many years was obviously an insignificant person in the plot. However, he didn't expect that Mr. Miao would die in her hands. The original owner didn't know anything, so Ning Shu's attention was on Zhang Jiasen when she entered the plot. If he hadn't seen Zhang Jiasen and Mrs. Ping talking that night and Mrs. Ping being caught red-handed, Ning Shu's doubts would have been answered. Zhang Jiasen had a spy in the Miao family. Ning Shu knew that Mrs. Ping was working for Zhang Jiasen, so he needed Mrs. Ping's confession. Mrs. Ping closed her mouth and didn't speak. She just said, I'm sorry, master and madam. I'm really sorry. What was the use of saying sorry when she harmed others for her own selfish desires? Ning Shu narrowed his eyes at Mrs. Ping. He didn't know what tempting conditions could make Mrs. Ping refuse to speak. I didn't want to kill old master, really. Aunt Ping repeated the same words over and over again. Ning Shu just sneered. Zhang Jiasen, who was waiting at the entrance of the police station, saw that Ning Shu hadn't come out for a long time. Moreover, it was already dark. Zhang Jiasen stared at the door with a particularly treacherous and cold gaze. His clenched fists loosened and tightened and loosened, and his entire body was filled with irritation. When Ning Shu left the police station, he saw that Zhang Jiasen was still waiting at the door. He didn't say anything. Meow meow, what's going on? Why did Aunt Ping poison Dad? Did she tell you? Zhang Jiasen hurriedly walked towards Ning Shu and asked. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen with an angry expression and said, she really doesn't want to say anything. Zhang Jiasen's expression relaxed when he heard that Mrs. Ping didn't say anything. He comforted Ning Shu, the truth will come out eventually. Don't be so anxious. Fortunately, father-in-law is fine. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen and scolded angrily, she really doesn't know what's going on. Jiasen, why do you think? Dad and Mom didn't hurt her and gave her a salary. We don't expect her to be grateful, but she can't be so heartless. This kind of person should go to hell after she dies. Zhang Jiasen's expression didn't change at all when he heard such curses. He softened his voice and comforted Ning Shu, "All right, don't be angry. It's not good to hurt your body. The truth will come out eventually." Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen, whose expression didn't change. She was obviously scolding him indirectly, but Zhang Jiasen was so magnanimous. This man was determined and would do anything to achieve his goal. Miao Miao Miao's death wasn't unjust. "Miao Miao, you haven't gone back for a long time. Go back today," Zhang Jiasen said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu's expression became serious. "Why would I go back? Your mom will scold me again, and your sister will kneel down in front of me again. You're making me look like a bad person." Zhang Jiasen's expression was very helpless. He reached out his hand and touched Ning Shu's head. He sighed as if he had made a great compromise. He said to Ning Shu, "Miao Miao, I've already discussed with my parents and asked them to go back to live in the countryside. But the house in the countryside is too shabby and old. I think I've saved some money in the past 2 years to build a clean and comfortable house for them. Miao Miao, what do you think?" Ning Shu instantly felt that Zhang Jiasen was going to transfer his assets. Build a house? Was he planning to build a big villa in the countryside? Ning Shu's expression didn't change. She blinked and asked, "Do Dad and Mom agree?" Zhang Jiasen sighed and said, "Actually, they're not used to living in the city. It's just that brother-in-law is still in the detention center. When brother-in-law is released, they'll go back." Ning Shu's eyelids trembled. She finally understood that Zhang Jiasen could achieve several goals by doing one thing. Sending his parents back would appease Miao Miao. Secondly, he could build a house for his parents. With Miao Miao's stupidity, she might even fork out money to help build the house. Thirdly, he could get his brother-in-law out. Getting Tan Heyu out would definitely cost money. Who would fork out the money? Zhang Jiasen's parents must have put a lot of pressure on him to get Tan Heyu out. This person was really scheming against her all the time. Zhang Jiasen asked, "Miao Miao, what do you think?" Ning Shu smiled and said, "As long as you're happy. It seems like brother-in-law is going to be detained for half a year. It's not a long time. It's only half a year. It's not a big deal to let them stay here for half a year. After all, once they go back to the countryside, they won't be able to see each other for a year." Ning Shu was very understanding. "Jiasen, don't worry. Let them stay here for a while." Ning Shu raised his wrist and looked at his watch. He then said to Zhang Jiasen, who was a little confused, "I have to go back. Dad's health is not good. He has to go to the hospital for a checkup. Help me take care of the company. I won't be going back home." Ning Shu then opened the door and got in the car. He didn't wait for Zhang Jiasen to say anything and drove away. Looking at the car leaving dust behind, Zhang Jiasen angrily swung his arm and kicked the flower bed. His face was very ugly. Why was Miao Miao like this now? He felt that something was wrong. Zhang Jiasen stared at the police station. Did Aunt Ping say something? If she did, Miao Miao shouldn't have reacted like this. Miao Miao was simple and couldn't pretend anything. If she really knew something, she would make a scene. Zhang Jiasen felt very annoyed. He wanted to find Shui Man, but now was a sensitive time. Zhang Jiasen's heart was tight. He couldn't make a mistake at this time. Zhang Jiasen walked into the police station. He wanted to visit Aunt Ping, but was told that the visiting time today had passed. A series of setbacks made Zhang Jiasen very angry. But the expression on his face was indifferent and calm. His eyes were very deep and there was a cold aura around him. Chapter 455. The depressed Zhang Jiasen found a bar to drink. When he returned home drunk, he saw that the house was pitch black and the lights were not turned on. He didn't know what he bumped into, but the volcano in Zhang Jiasen's heart erupted. "What's going on? Why didn't you turn on the lights?" Zhang Jiasen said coldly. "Where did you run off to? There's no electricity or water in the house. I couldn't find you for a whole day. Are you trying to starve us to death?" Zhang Jiasen's mother's voice rang out in the dark. "If Xiaomei didn't know how to make takeout, your father and I would have starved to death." Hearing his mother's words, Zhang Jiasen felt powerless. He took his phone to the kitchen and lit a candle. Then, he saw his family sitting on the sofa. "Jiasen, I see that everyone else has electricity. Why is it that only our house doesn't have electricity?" Zhang Jiasen's mother was very angry. "Why can't we have electricity? Brother, when will there be electricity? I was playing games when the electricity stopped," Zhang Xiaomei's twin brother asked Zhang Jiasen. "Brother, about your brother-in-law." Zhang Wenlan looked at Zhang Jiasen with a sad expression. Zhang Jiasen had drunk a lot of wine. Now that he heard all the chatter in his ears, an inexplicable feeling was stuck in his heart. Zhang Jiasen picked up his phone and called Ning Shu. The first thing he said was, "Meow meow, why didn't you pay the electricity bill?" Ning Shu, who received the call, was speechless. She didn't live in the house. Why did she have to pay the electricity bill? What a slut! How could Zhang Jiasen have the nerve to say that? Ning Shu smiled. She even felt that it was a waste to be angry. "I'm busy with the company's affairs and I don't live at home. How can I remember such a trivial matter like the water and electricity bill? It's getting late, I'm hanging up. I'm going to sleep. You can pay the electricity bill." Ning Shu yawned and hung up. As Zhang Jiasen listened to the busy tone on the phone, he felt as if there was magma surging in his heart, as if it was about to gush out of his chest. Zhang Jiasen was so angry that his chest was heaving up and down. Under the influence of alcohol, his mind was in a daze. Picking up his phone, he smashed it on the ground and practically gnashed his teeth as he yelled, "Meow meow meow." While calling out for meow meow meow, Zhang Jiasen's face revealed a sinister and treacherous expression. Under the illumination of the candlelight, it looked extremely terrifying. Everyone in the room was shocked by Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen's father quickly stood up and asked Zhang Jiasen, "What's wrong? Why did you smash the phone? Don't phones cost money?" Zhang Jiasen's mother muttered. She looked at the broken phone on the ground with heartache. "Get in the house and sleep. What are you mumbling about?" Zhang Jiasen's father yelled at Zhang Jiasen's mother. Zhang Jiasen's mother looked dissatisfied, but she didn't dare to refute Zhang Jiasen's father, the head of the family. She turned around and went into the room. Only the father and son were left in the living room. Zhang Jiasen's father asked Zhang Jiasen, "What happened?" After venting, Zhang Jiasen calmed down and said, "It's nothing. I can solve it." Zhang Jiasen's father nodded. His eyebrows were filled with trust for Zhang Jiasen. This son of his was the pride of the Zhang family. Zhang Jiasen had his own ideas since he was young. He could solve everything by himself. There wouldn't be any problems. When Zhang Jiasen was young, he was full of spirit. He could make those who bullied him suffer in silence. Zhang Jiasen's father worked so hard to cultivate Zhang Jiasen. Now, Zhang Jiasen had become the most powerful person in the village. Because of Zhang Jiasen's existence, Zhang Jiasen's father was now very respected in the village. Many people came to ask him for help. Zhang Jiasen's father was a person who couldn't fly, so he tried his best to lay eggs so that his next generation could fly. He had the cunning and scheming of a villager. Zhang Jiasen's father didn't say anything else. He went into the house to sleep. Zhang Jiasen went to the balcony and lit a cigarette. Standing on the balcony and looking at the thousands of lights, this city was gorgeous. Every inch of land was a thick stack of money. After graduating from university, he couldn't survive in this city. He couldn't buy a house in this city for the rest of his life. He couldn't settle down in this city. He was a university student in the village. Everyone who talked about him gave him a thumbs up. The praise and pressure forced him to work hard to survive here. Even if there were sacrifices, it was worth it. He had succeeded, so he had to protect his success. He had to cut through all obstacles and move forward. He used money and status to build his success and erase his poor past. Zhang Jiasen put out the cigarette butt. His face was indifferent. The next morning, Ning Shu first went to the university to look for Aunt Ping's son. Aunt Ping's son didn't seem to know that something had happened to his mother. When he came down from the dormitory building, his eyes were still hazy. Ning Shu looked at Aunt Ping's son. He was an ordinary university student. Ning Shu brought Aunt Ping's son to the police station. Aunt Ping's son didn't know why this beautiful woman brought him to the police station. He didn't do anything illegal. As soon as he entered the police station, Ning Shu met Zhang Jiasen. So early? Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and looked at Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen, who had just come out, was also stunned when he saw Ning Shu. Then he saw the young boy next to Ning Shu. A trace of gloominess and displeasure flashed in his eyes. Obviously, he was unhappy to see his wife with another man. Ning Shu asked, "Why are you here?" Zhang Jiasen glanced at Aunt Ping's son. He looked at Ning Shu gently and said, "I'm here to see Aunt Ping. I just want to ask her why she did this. I want to persuade her to confess." Ning Shu was speechless. "Who is this?" Zhang Jiasen looked down at Aunt Ping's son. His temperament was very strong. Aunt Ping's son was like a chicken facing a tiger in front of Zhang Jiasen. Aunt Ping's son's expression changed. Especially when he heard this man mention Aunt Ping, he felt uneasy. In addition, this man's strong temperament made his heart pound and his palms sweat. Ning Shu said, "This is Aunt Ping's son. I brought him to see his mother." Zhang Jiasen suddenly looked at Ning Shu. "Aunt Ping's son? Why did you bring him here? Is there anything wrong with a mother wanting to see her son?" Ning Shu said to Zhang Jiasen. He brushed past him and entered the police station. Aunt Ping's son's face was pale. He couldn't believe that his mother was in the police station. Zhang Jiasen's expression kept changing. In the end, he followed Ning Shu in. "Didn't you see her just now?" Ning Shu asked Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen smiled and said to Ning Shu, "Since we've already met, we'll go back together later. Meow meow, let's have lunch together. We haven't eaten together for a long time. We don't have to go home. Just the two of us." Zhang Jiasen was using this kind of mask to hide his scheming heart. He played along, and meow 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 was Zhang Jiasen's target. Chapter 456. Mrs. Ping burst into tears when she saw her son. The mother and son were talking on the phone through the bulletproof glass. Mrs. Ping's son could never imagine that his mother had become a murderer. What should he do? What should his mother do? What should the family do? Could he continue his studies? What if his classmates found out that his mother was a murderer? Too many thoughts struck Mrs. Ping's son's mind. "Mom, why did you do this?" Mrs. Ping just cried and didn't speak. She refused to say anything. Ning Shu glanced at Zhang Jiasen next to him. What a good trick. He could even pry open a dead person's mouth, let alone a living person. Ning Shu turned and left. Zhang Jiasen followed Ning Shu out of the police station. Ning Shu suddenly turned to Zhang Jiasen and said, "Jiasen, I might not be able to manage the company anymore." Zhang Jiasen was a little surprised. This woman was full of vigor before. Why did she suddenly give up? Zhang Jiasen narrowed his eyes and bent down slightly to look into Ning Shu's eyes. He asked, "What's wrong? Why is my little wife suddenly so dispirited?" Ning Shu, "Ugh, I just feel tired. I feel like I'm not cut out for this. Dad's health is not good, so I want to stay at home to take care of him. The company is really too tiring. Zhang Jiasen laughed. His laughter seemed to vibrate from his chest, sounding very deep and sexy. That's good. We can have a cute baby. Ning Shu ignored the words, have a baby, and said, I want to give you the position of general manager of the company. I can't do it. It's better for you to do it. Zhang Jiasen's expression was a little dull. He reacted in an instant. He touched Ning Shu's head and said dotingly, the position of general manager is very important. How can you give it away so easily? Zhang Jiasen reached out and held Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu could feel his hand trembling slightly. But he said, you silly girl. Everything you do is temporary. His heart clearly wanted it, but his mouth said such hypocritical words. His body was much more honest than his mouth. He was so excited that he was trembling. Ning Shu said, of course I'm telling the truth. Get ready to take over the position of general manager. Seeing the joy in Zhang Jiasen's eyes, Ning Shu sneered in his heart. Are you serious? Zhang Jiasen said helplessly, work is not a game. How can it be so casual? This company belongs to my family. What's wrong with that? Ning Shu was very domineering. After getting Ning Shu's assurance, Zhang Jiasen was very happy and became very attentive to Ning Shu. Every day, he would send and receive Ning Shu to and from work. Then, he would hear from Ning Shu that he liked tulips and would get a bunch of tulips every morning. Ning Shu stayed at her parents' house. Zhang Jiasen did not mention anything about letting Ning Shu go back. Zhang Jiasen's mother also did not appear in front of Ning Shu. Zhang Jiasen obviously knew that his wife did not like his mother. He did not let his mother hang around in front of Ning Shu anymore. Zhang Jiasen's mother could be domineering because she gave birth to such a capable son. She would have to rely on Zhang Jiasen for the rest of her life. So, she would do whatever Zhang Jiasen said. Ning Shu suddenly admired Zhang Jiasen. This man was really flexible. In order to succeed, he could grit his teeth and bear the pain. Zhang Jiasen finally succeeded, but Zhang Jiasen was ruthless and stingy. He lacked a kind of boldness. Zhang Jiasen did this because he wanted to quickly take over the position of general manager. Every time they saw this scumbag in front of their daughter, the Miao couple was about to explode with anger. Their minds were full of scenes of Zhang Jiasen rolling with other women. If it wasn't for his daughter stopping him, Miao's father would have killed this bastard. However, his daughter did not allow him to intervene. Miao's father pretended that he did not know anything. On one hand, it was out of consideration for his daughter. On the other hand, it was inexplicably pleasing to see this ingrate being so affectionate and considerate to his daughter. The Miao couple no longer regarded Zhang Jiasen as their son-in-law. Although Ning Shu promised to let Zhang Jiasen be the general manager, he refused to step down from the position. This made Zhang Jiasen very angry. Even if it was a carrot that was dropped in front of him, Zhang Jiasen must get it. This had always been his purpose. Ning Shu could naturally see Zhang Jiasen's anxiety. Sometimes, Zhang Jiasen's eyes were filled with uncontrollable malice and resentment. Ning Shu also got what he wanted. He found the design that was stolen by Zhang Jiasen's brother-in-law, Tan Heyu. It was found by the intern secretary that Ning Shu sent to Shui Manman's side. When it was found, it was shredded into pieces by a shredder. Ning Shu spent a lot of time piecing the shredded pieces together. These things were indeed in Zhang Jiasen's hands. As for Shui Manman, she did not have the ability to do such a thing. She was just a daughter flower that relied on men. Zhang Jiasen, how cold-hearted he was to put his brother-in-law into this. Perhaps Tan Heyu was too much of a bastard and Zhang Jiasen took the opportunity to teach him a lesson. In short, Zhang Jiasen was a man with deep thoughts. Ning Shu was more fortunate that he did not directly fall out with Zhang Jiasen. Instead, he collected evidence of Zhang Jiasen's crimes in private. If he rashly confronted Zhang Jiasen, Ning Shu did not think that he could win against Zhang Jiasen. He might even let Zhang Jiasen take a piece of meat from the Miao family. The mansion and real estate were all Zhang Jiasen's. With these things, Zhang Jiasen had a foothold. Ning Shu let out a long sigh of relief. It was just that pretending to be polite with Zhang Jiasen was simply disgusting. Perhaps Zhang Jiasen also felt the same. They hated each other, but they still had to love each other. Ning Shu expressed that his heart was very tired. However, Ning Shu still fulfilled his promise and let Zhang Jiasen be the general manager. He also set a date for Zhang Jiasen to take over as the general manager. Zhang Jiasen thought that becoming the general manager was a distant dream. Suddenly, it was realized. Even with Zhang Jiasen's calmness, he was a bit dazed. Then, he kissed Ning Shu's forehead. "Wife, you are so good." Ning Shu smiled at Zhang Jiasen with a twisted face. "It's okay, it's okay." Then, he wiped his forehead without leaving a trace. If his face was stained with saliva, he would get ringworm. Zhang Jiasen seemed to be completely relieved. If they really found out something, Miao Ji would not let him become the general manager. Although Aunt Ping in the police station was a bit troublesome, Zhang Jiasen was very calm and steady. Ning Shu did not know what tricks Zhang Jiasen had up his sleeves. What exactly did Zhang Jiasen have on Aunt Ping that made Aunt Ping rather bear the crime of murder than say anything? Zhang Jiasen was a person who was used to using other people's weaknesses to achieve his own goals. Ning Shu's goal was to make Zhang Jiasen lose everything and be unable to turn over a new leaf until he died. If Zhang Jiasen wanted to be outstanding, then he would cut off his path to success. Chapter 457. Shui Man walked in and saw Zhang Jiasen kissing Miao Miao's forehead. Her face turned pale and she looked at Zhang Jiasen in a daze. Zhang Jiasen saw Shui Man rushing into the office so rashly with such a sorrowful expression. Wasn't she going to expose herself in front of Miao? He would be the general manager soon, so he couldn't make any mistakes. Zhang Jiasen was very dissatisfied with Shui Man's behavior. He felt that Shui Man didn't know what was going on. Ning Shu turned around and saw Shui Man. She looked as if she had been betrayed, which made Ning Shu feel awkward. "Can you not be so obvious? It's so obvious that I can't pretend not to see it." Ning Shu's gaze landed on Shui Man's earlobes. She was wearing a pair of exquisite earrings with tiny diamonds inlaid on them. As Shui Man moved, the earrings gave off a soft light. "Secretary Shui, these earrings aren't cheap. They're the latest from Tiffany," Ning Shu said with a smile. His gaze moved to Shui Man's feet. "This pair of shoes is from Ferragamo. Secretary Shui's family background must be very good. Why are you a secretary?" Shui Man quickly touched the earring with her hand and saw Zhang Jiasen's cold face. Obviously, she knew that Zhang Jiasen was angry. She quickly said, "This isn't real. It's an imitation." Ning Shu smiled and didn't say anything. Can't she tell the difference between real and fake? Yours are real. Why do you say they're imitation? Ning Shu walked in front of Shui Man. Shui Man panicked and took 2 steps back. Ning Shu covered his mouth and laughed. Shui Man looked like she was going to do something to him. "Secretary Shui, are you afraid of me?" She was so guilty. "No. No," Shui Man stuttered and looked at Zhang Jiasen helplessly. Zhang Jiasen waved at Shui Man and asked her to leave. Ning Shu said, "Your secretary must have something to tell you. I'll leave first." "Okay, be careful on the road," Zhang Jiasen said gently to Ning Shu. Shui Man watched from the side, biting her lip so hard that it almost bled. When Ning Shu left, the gentle expression on Zhang Jiasen's face disappeared and turned cold. He looked at Shui Man coldly and said, don't wear these things in the company anymore. Meow 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 is a rich girl and she knows these things. I don't want anything to happen at such a critical time. At least before I become the general manager, I don't want meow 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 to know about our relationship. Shui Man Man pursed her lips and looked sad. I feel sad when I see how well you treat meow meow meow. Have you really fallen in love with meow 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 and want to live happily with her? Hearing Shui Man Man's words, Zhang Jiasen was in a daze for a moment. To be honest, meow 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 was an innocent and kind girl. She didn't lack anything since she was young and grew up in a honey pot. On the other hand, Zhang Jiasen grew up in bitter water and crawled on the thorny road to success. Zhang Jiasen was jealous of meow meow meow. In front of the innocent meow meow meow, he was a person tainted by the secular world. His heart carried too many things. Even if he liked Shui Man Man, it was because he was the same kind of person as Shui Man Man. Meow meow meow's beauty made people want to destroy her. In the end, Zhang Jiasen pulled meow 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 into hell and made her lose everything. You really fell in love with meow meow meow? Seeing that Zhang Jiasen didn't speak, Shui Man Man took it as a yes. Tears welled up in Shui Man Man's eyes. She raised her head and didn't let the tears fall. In the end, the tears still fell. Zhang Jiasen sighed and wiped away the tears on Shui Man Man's face. He said gently, "No, I don't like meow meow meow. I like you the way you are. I can tell you with certainty that I have never liked meow meow meow." Shui Man Man smiled through her tears. Her eyes were gentle and affectionate. "I don't care about status. I just want to be with you." "I know." Zhang Jiasen took a deep breath. Zhang Jiasen was appointed as the general manager a few days later. It was announced by Ning Shu in front of the company's higher-ups that Zhang Jiasen was appointed as the general manager. In the office, Ning Shu sat on the sofa and watched Zhang Jiasen slowly buttoning Chen San's wrists. Then, he put on his suit jacket. It was like an emperor who was about to ascend the throne wearing a dragon robe. Zhang Jiasen was in high spirits today. He had wax on his hair. He looked very energetic and serious. His whole body was filled with an elite aura. It was also very charming. Now, Zhang Jiasen had taken the first step to success. Zhang Jiasen saw that Ning Shu was looking at him and asked, "Is this outfit okay?" Ning Shu stood up and adjusted Zhang Jiasen's tie. "Very good." Zhang Jiasen reached out and held Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu said, "I am really happy now. I feel that this is the happiest time of my life. Meow meow, we will always be happy. We will have our own children. On weekends, in the garden, we will watch the children play. We will be a happy family." Zhang Jiasen had a smile on his face. It was as if he was imagining and looking forward to that kind of life. His tone became more sincere. "I want to hold your hand and grow old together." Ning Shu was speechless. Was he imagining her as Shui Man Man? Grow old together? You want to grow old together with Shui Man Man, right? Haha. Stop being so disgusting. Ning Shu put on a fake smile and said indifferently, "Of course we can grow old together." Zhang Jiasen said eagerly, "Meow meow, I am serious. I am sincere." There was really no end to it. It was enough to act once. What was the point of repeating it over and over again? Ning Shu chuckled. He raised his wrist and looked at it. "The meeting is about to start." Meow meow. Zhang Jiasen wanted to say something, but when he saw Ning Shu's indifferent expression, he swallowed his words. Zhang Jiasen seemed to be a little nervous. After all, he wanted to get what he wanted. Zhang Jiasen walked back and forth in the office. Ning Shu drank water indifferently. He was in a completely different state from Zhang Jiasen, who was suppressing his excitement and anxiety. "Manager, the department manager is in the meeting room." Shui Man Man pushed the door open and said to Zhang Jiasen. Ning Shu looked at Shui Man Man and sized her up. He realized that Shui Man Man didn't have any branded clothes on her body. She also had ordinary earrings on her ears. Her shoes were no longer branded. After removing all the branded clothes on her body, Ning Shu said with a smile, "Secretary Shui, the brooch you wore last time was pretty good. Why aren't you wearing it anymore?" Secretary Shui's face turned pale. She then said calmly, "I borrowed it from a friend. I have already returned it." Ning Shu replied with an "Oh. You go to the meeting room first. We will be there soon." Zhang Jiasen helped Secretary Shui out. Shui Man Man hurriedly went out. Ning Shu sneered. How shameless. Chapter 458. Zhang Jiasen saw that Ning Shu kept paying attention to the brands on Shui Man Man and wondered if she knew something. Actually, Secretary Shui's family background is not bad. It's normal for her to have some brands. Zhang Jiasen said. "Meow meow, I want to give you a gift." Zhang Jiasen took out a jewelry box from the box and opened it. There was a diamond necklace inside. The workmanship was very exquisite. Zhang Jiasen's face was gentle. "I bought this especially for you." Ning Shu said faintly, "You are the general manager. Why are you giving me a gift?" "Meow meow, I used half a year's salary to buy this for you. Last time, you said that Secretary Shui had a lot of brands on her. This time, I also bought a brand for you." Zhang Jiasen said gently to Ning Shu. "Meow meow, do you like it?" Ning Shu looked at the diamond necklace. This kind of diamond necklace was the style of wearing a dress to attend a banquet. It would be exaggerated to wear it normally. This was not the style that Meow 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 liked. Therefore, Ning Shu did not believe that Zhang Jiasen bought this necklace for her. Maybe he bought it for Shui Man Man, but now he gave it to her. "Do you want me to help you put it on?" Zhang Jiasen asked Ning Shu. "No need." Ning Shu shook her head and closed the jewelry box and placed it on the table. Ning Shu's indifferent attitude made Zhang Jiasen feel frustrated. If Shui Man Man received this gift, she would be very happy. However, Meow Meow Meow's attitude made Zhang Jiasen depressed. He felt that he could not show any value in front of Meow 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 because Meow 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 had everything. She did not care at all. Ning Shu saw the hurt expression on Zhang Jiasen's face and did not care at all. "Hurt? Who are you trying to show this to?" Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasen entered the meeting room one after the other. Ning Shu did not say much and went straight to the point. Zhang Jiasen will be the general manager of the company. He will be responsible for the company's business and development. Today, Ning Shu's father didn't come because he wasn't feeling well. Everyone looked at each other, wondering if Ning Shu was joking or not. "Everyone, don't doubt me. From today onwards, I will be appointed as the general manager. I hope that I will work hard with my colleagues to make the company stronger," Zhang Jiasen said in a low voice. Hearing Zhang Jiasen's words, everyone applauded. Ning Shu looked at all of this in silence. The atmosphere was more enthusiastic than when she was the general manager. Obviously, these people recognized Zhang Jiasen more than Ning Shu. Ning Shu was not angry. She had to protect this company and get rid of some of the parasites in the company. Zhang Jiasen could embezzle money from a luxurious mansion. How could he become so rich in 2 years if he did not have any accomplices or subordinates in the company to support him? Zhang Jiasen gave an impassioned speech and ended the meeting in a pleasant atmosphere. Zhang Jiasen, who was a little nervous before, was now completely relieved. He had become the general manager of the company. The next step was to take control of the company. Even the chairman would be a mere figurehead. Ning Shu just looked at the complacent Zhang Jiasen silently. Soon, very soon, Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasen returned to the office. When they opened the door, they saw Shui Man Man holding a jewelry box, which was placed on the table by Ning Shu. Seeing that Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasen had returned, Shui Man quickly closed the box and put it on the table. I saw this box on the table and picked it up to have a look, Shui Man quickly said. Ning Shu asked, is this your jewelry? Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen and said with some bad intentions, Jiasen gave it to me. Shui Man's face changed. She quickly looked at Zhang Jiasen for confirmation. Zhang Jiasen ignored Shui Man's gaze. Ning Shu picked up the jewelry box and said to Zhang Jiasen, I'm going to accompany Dad for a checkup. You should pay more attention to the company. Okay, be careful on the road. Zhang Jiasen said gently. He even opened the office door for Ning Shu and said again, be careful on the road. Ning Shu said to Shui Man, Secretary Shui, I'm leaving. Please take care. Shui Man's voice was trembling. Ning Shu saw Shui Man's pale face and the smile on her face. Seeing Shui Man's pained look, he was secretly happy. As soon as Ning Shu left, Shui Man's face fell. Especially when she saw Zhang Jiasen treat Miao so well, it made Shui Man panic. Especially when Zhang Jiasen gave Miao the necklace that should have been given to her. Jiasen. Shui Man looked at Zhang Jiasen with watery eyes and an uncontrollable affection. Zhang Jiasen was originally happy about the promotion, but seeing Shui Man's sad face, he rubbed his eyebrows and said, give this necklace to Miao first. I'll buy another one for you tomorrow. Shui Man shook her head and said, I don't care about the necklace. I want this necklace because I want to attend various events with you and be able to stand side by side with you. What I care about is your attitude towards Miao. Why are you so good to her? Hearing Shui Man's question, Zhang Jiasen's eyebrows flashed with impatience and gloominess. He said, I've been good to Miao in the past. You also know that it's just a show. You didn't say it before, so why do you keep saying it now? Miao is just a chess piece. In the past, I could still tolerate it. But now, as long as I see you being good to Miao, my heart will feel uncomfortable. I'm jealous that Miao can stand by your side and stand by your side openly. But as for me, I can only watch the man I like be good to someone else and be someone else's husband. Shui Man was so uncomfortable that she couldn't control herself. Her body trembled slightly as if she was extremely uncomfortable. Zhang Jiasen sighed and said firmly, you have to believe me. I have no feelings for Miao. When I completely control the Miao family, we'll get married. Hearing Zhang Jiasen's promise, Shui Man's heart flashed with gloominess. How long do I have to wait? Miao reached out and wrapped her arms around Zhang Jiasen's waist. I just want to stay by your side, Jiasen. Without you, I'll die. This was in the office. Zhang Jiasen had always avoided any intimate actions with Shui Man in public. But when she cried and wet his shirt, Zhang Jiasen's heart softened. In the end, he didn't push Shui Man away. This was the reason why Zhang Jiasen liked Shui Man. He felt the value of his existence from Shui Man. Shui Man worshipped him, respected him, and adored him. It wasn't like when he was facing Miao. The halo behind Miao made him unable to breathe. Zhang Jiasen was a male chauvinist. In the past few years in the company, people said that he was relying on women to get to where he was today. Zhang Jiasen remembered these words in his heart. Chapter 459. Zhang Jiasen knew that he was just a poor boy from the countryside. In this big city, he had no capital and no connections. Even if he worked hard in this city for a lifetime, he would not be able to take root. Without these external material conditions, love was a joke. Zhang Jiasen could only take the unconventional path and pay some price to survive in this city. His family's expectations and his desire to succeed were all reasons that made Zhang Jiasen use his advantages. With a cornerstone, he could step on the cornerstone and climb even higher. Marrying a woman could save him 20 years of hard work. Even if people in the company called him a freeloader, he would endure it. One day, he would be able to wash away this humiliation. Zhang Jiasen held Shui Man in his arms. With these external conditions, he would love her even more. Without the position of general manager, Ning Shu accompanied Miao's father to the hospital for a checkup. She usually boiled soup for Miao's father. She was completely like a housewife. Miao Ying's father looked at Ning Shu's carefree expression and said with disappointment, "What are you doing, girl? Don't tell me you can't bear to let that kid go. You even gave him the position of general manager. He must be dreaming." Ning Shu held a pair of scissors in her hand and cut the lily leaves. She asked Miao's mother, "Mom, can I cut it like this?" Miao's mother glanced at her and nodded. She said, Miao, what's your attitude towards Zhang Jiasen? He cheated our family by cheating and embezzling the company's money. Mom, I know what I'm doing. Let me handle this. If I can't handle it, Dad, you can do it." Ning Shu put the lily into the vase leisurely. Miao's father looked at Ning Shu and laughed. "Very good. Like father, like daughter. What about Zhang Jiasen's secretary?" Miao's mother looked at Ning Shu. "Do you want to drive her out of the company?" Ning Shu smiled and shook her head. "It's okay. Let her stay in the company. It's not good to drive her out." Ning Shu already had a plan in mind, and this plan needed Shui Man. He had to spit out everything that he had eaten from the Miao family. Occasionally, Ning Shu would go to the company and see that Zhang Jiasen was very busy. If he was not busy signing documents, he was busy holding meetings and giving advice. Zhang Jiasen no longer had that gloomy aura around him. Instead, he exuded an incomparable confidence. Zhang Jiasen's temperament seemed to have become even more powerful. The current Zhang Jiasen was simply a radiating charm. Even Shui Man's gaze towards Zhang Jiasen was filled with admiration and unswerving devotion. This was the attractiveness of a successful man to a woman. It was probably because she hadn't been in the company recently. Then, Shui Man started to wear branded clothes again. For example, the scarf around her neck. Shui Man was really vain. Even when she was at work, she still wore these things without a trace. Perhaps these things would soon become Shui Man's death talisman. When Zhang Jiasen saw that Ning Shu had arrived, he stopped what he was doing and sent Shui Man out. Shui Man hesitated for a moment before leaving. Miao, why are you here?" Zhang Jiasen asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, "I just came to see you. You seem to be very busy." "Well, I just took over these things. I'm a little busy." Zhang Jiasen grabbed Ning Shu's hand and said, "I'm sorry. I've been busy recently and neglected you. When we get familiar with these things, we'll have a baby." Bang! A clear sound of a porcelain cup falling to the ground was heard. Ning Shu turned his head and saw that Shui Man was coming in with coffee. However, the coffee fell to the ground. Obviously, she heard Zhang Jiasen say that they were going to have a baby. She was so flustered that she spilled the coffee. Zhang Jiasen's face darkened when he saw this scene. Shui Man bit her lips and squatted down to pick up the pieces of the cup on the ground. Her face was extremely pale, as if she had been hit hard. "Well, just ask the cleaner to clean it up." Zhang Jiasen saw that Shui Man couldn't control her emotions at all, so he hurriedly sent her away. Ning Shu said with a smile, "It's okay. It's just a broken cup." This scene was really comfortable to watch. Well, especially when Zhang Jiasen bullied Shui Man. Ning Shu glanced at Shui Man, who was squatting down to pick up the pieces. It seemed that she didn't hear Zhang Jiasen's words at all. Ah! Shui Man, who was in a trance, was pricked by a piece of glass. A drop of blood immediately appeared on her finger. Zhang Jiasen took a deep breath and said to Shui Man in a stern voice, "Get out and ask the cleaner to clean it up." Shui Man was stunned by Zhang Jiasen's roar. The emotions that she had been suppressing completely broke out. Tears fell down her face and the blood on her finger dripped onto the floor. Ning Shu's eyes were shining. "Oh my, it's so cruel. I like it so much. Let Zhang Jiasen worry about it. Who would be tired if he didn't go back and forth between two women? You're too fierce. You scared the little girl to tears." Ning Shu glanced at Shui Man. Shui Man was not a little girl. When Zhang Jiasen heard Ning Shu say that Shui Man was a little girl, he felt uncomfortable all over. It was as if he was an old cow eating young grass. "Then I'll leave first." Ning Shu passed by Shui Man. "Take care of your wound. It's not good if it drips on the scarf. Your scarf looks expensive." Shui Man's body stiffened and her tears flowed even faster. Ning Shu left. Zhang Jiasen closed the office door and held Shui Man's bleeding hand. "Your wound needs to be taken care of. I don't need you to care." Shui Man shook off Zhang Jiasen's hand and looked sad. "You're going to have a child with Miao, but I want to have a child. Why can't you give me a child?" Every time she was with Zhang Jiasen would take precautions. Zhang Jiasen's face turned cold. "We've discussed it before. Before our relationship is made public, we can't have a child." Zhang Jiasen didn't want an illegitimate child to appear. It would affect his prestige and image of the entire company. At least before his marriage with Miao was dissolved, such a thing couldn't happen. "But you're going to have a child with Miao. Shui Man saw Zhang Jiasen's cold face and felt even more sad. Zhang Jiasen rubbed his forehead and said helplessly, "Can't you see that I'm just brushing her off? How can I have a child with her? You should resign. If you stay in the company with such emotions, people will find out sooner or later." To be honest, Zhang Jiasen was a little impatient with Shui Man's emotional behavior. If it was at home, a very private place, Zhang Jiasen might be able to comfort Shui Man patiently. But in such a public place, people could come in at any time. They could be exposed at any time. Zhang Jiasen knew better than anyone how difficult it was to climb to this point, so he couldn't make any mistakes. The irrational Shui Man was like a bomb. Chapter 460. What Zhang Jiasen meant was for Shui Man to stay in Tang Chen's mansion and go shopping when she had nothing to do. She didn't want to arouse suspicion in the company. Shui Man panicked when she heard Zhang Jiasen ask her to resign. She had to stay by Zhang Jiasen's side no matter what. She had to protect such an excellent man. Moreover, there were many young girls who had just graduated from school. Shui Man knew that she wasn't young anymore. She was 28 years old at most. Naturally, she couldn't compare to those young girls. Her only advantage was that she had a pure relationship with Zhang Jiasen in university. "I have to work. Jiasen, don't worry. I'll be careful." Shui Man didn't care about her grievances. She hurriedly promised Zhang Jiasen and even acted coquettishly. Zhang Jiasen nodded. Ning Shu, who had returned to her office, overheard the conversation between the two at the door and laughed. Zhang Jiasen and Shui Man were like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. Zhang Jiasen wanted to devour the Miao family, while Shui Man was no longer satisfied with Zhang Jiasen keeping a mistress in a golden house. She wanted to stand by Zhang Jiasen's side openly. They were both greedy and selfish people. Ning Shu was speechless. Miao truly loved Zhang Jiasen, but Zhang Jiasen didn't care at all. He liked Shui Man. Shui Man's love was based on material things. If Zhang Jiasen didn't have his current status, there was a 50% chance that Shui Man wouldn't have chosen him. Perhaps Zhang Jiasen felt that love with mutual benefits was stable and secure. Love with stable benefits could also fall apart because of benefits. Ning Shu felt that it was about time to make a move. He went to the police station to visit Aunt Ping. During this time, Aunt Ping had lost a lot of weight. Her cheekbones were protruding and she wasn't in good spirits. Her hair looked much whiter than before. Her brows were filled with despair and worry. Ning Shu didn't pity her at all. In the original plot, Aunt Ping had succeeded. Although he didn't know what benefits Zhang Jiasen had given her, since she had chosen this path, she should bear the consequences of being discovered. Still not willing to talk. Ning Shu sat opposite Aunt Ping and looked at her through the bulletproof glass. Aunt Ping's lips quivered, but she didn't say anything. She was in a trance. It was obvious that the interrogation at the police station had taken a toll on her. Don't forget about your son. Your son will be expelled from school because of you. Although the Miao family is insignificant in this city, dealing with your son is still very easy. Ning Shu said indifferently. Mrs. Ping's thin face twitched, and she looked even more terrified. She stood up agitatedly and begged Ning Shu through the glass, Miss, I beg you. This has nothing to do with my son. Please don't do anything to my son. Then tell me why. Why did you poison my father's medicinal cuisine? Ning Shu asked. Aunt Ping told her not to hurt her son, but she was hurting Miao Miao Miao's father, hurting Miao Miao's relatives. How could Aunt Ping have the nerve to ask for help? Aunt Ping shook her head. I can't say. I really can't. I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. Ning Shu stood up. Take care of yourself. I won't come to see you in the future. Actually, I don't care about your confession at all. Ning Shu didn't have to beg Aunt Ping. As for Aunt Ping wanting to take all the blame for Zhang Jiasen's murder, Ning Shu didn't care at all. Anyway, Aunt Ping had to pay the price for what she had done. Seeing that Ning Shu was about to leave, Aunt Ping hurriedly stopped Ning Shu. Miss, wait. I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then forget it. As for your condition, I won't agree. You don't have the right to negotiate with me. Even if you don't confess, there will be evidence. Moreover, you are a murderer. Your son will be implicated because of you, be it his studies or work. She still wanted to agree to the condition. She was dreaming. Aunt Ping cried her heart out. Ning Shu left without looking back. After leaving the police station, Ning Shu took a deep breath. A woman must take good care of herself. There was no way to change her parents, but what she could do was not easily entrust the rest of her life to others. After marriage, she had to face her husband's family. After marriage, she had to give birth to children, take care of the housework, take care of her in-laws, and call her parents who had never raised her for a day. If she met a man who wasn't stingy at this time, her life would be like suffering in hell. Instead of being heartbroken and getting a divorce, she should stick to her own ideas and not entrust others easily. Ning Shu was very satisfied with her current life. Even if she was alone, even if she was just a soul, she could live freely. In every world, she would meet different people, different parents, and different friends. Every woman could live a colorful life, even if she didn't have a man. A man like Zhang Jiasen should be humanely destroyed. She had stayed in this world for a long time and had enough things in her hands. It was time to act. Zhang Jiasen had been the general manager for half a month, and his work was getting more and more handy. Standing in the office overlooking the entire city, Zhang Jiasen's heart was full of satisfaction. Looking down at the mountains, Zhang Jiasen now felt like an ancient emperor who was on Mount Tai. He would succeed. Zhang Jiasen looked at Shui Man, who was organizing the documents. Status, money, and women were a man's lifelong pursuit. He would soon get them. General Manager, there's a meeting in 15 minutes, Shui Man said to Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen smiled faintly. Got it. Shui Man looked at the high-spirited Zhang Jiasen. The current Zhang Jiasen was no longer gloomy like before. He seemed to have the confidence to control everything in his hands. Every time she saw this, Shui Man's heartbeat would become chaotic. She loved this man more. Zhang Jiasen tidied his clothes, pushed open the office door, and entered the meeting room. The department heads who were in the meeting room had all arrived. They were all waiting for Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen liked the feeling of being in the spotlight. In the past, he was still a subordinate of one of the department heads, but now, these department heads had become his subordinates. Zhang Jiasen walked into the meeting room. Just as he was about to speak, the office door was pushed open. The sound was very loud. Then, 5 or 6 people walked in. Zhang Jiasen's expression was stern. He said coldly, "Which department are you from? Don't you know that we're in a meeting now? We're the police." The person at the front took out his police badge and arrest warrant. "You're Zhang Jiasen, right? You're under arrest." Zhang Jiasen was stunned. Then, he said coldly, "What law did I break? If you want to arrest me, you have to show evidence. The police can't just arrest people. You're corrupt. Someone reported you. We already have concrete evidence." The leader of the police said to the team members, "Arrest him." Zhang Jiasen's heart trembled. He wanted to say something, but he was handcuffed. The handcuffs were very cold. It made Zhang Jiasen's heart turn cold. His body trembled uncontrollably. Chapter 461. Corruption and Bribery. What was going on? How could something like this happen? Zhang Jiasen's first reaction was that Shui Man had betrayed him. Only Shui Man knew about this. Zhang Jiasen was escorted out of the office. Along the way, he was met with all kinds of gazes, which made Zhang Jiasen feel like he was being dismembered. A few minutes ago, he was still the general manager of the company. Now, he was about to become a prisoner. Shui Man hid at the side and saw this scene. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She carried her bag and rushed back to the Thompson residence. She took out her suitcase and swept all the cosmetics and jewelry on the table into it. Then, he opened the wardrobe and stuffed all the clothes into the suitcase. It really couldn't fit them, so he found another suitcase and put away the shoes and the shower gel in the bathroom. On the one hand, it was to remove the traces of her life in this house. On the other hand, these things were very valuable and were treasured by Shui Man. Shui Man's heart was beating very fast. Thinking of the scene when Zhang Jiasen was taken away, Shui Man tried her best to calm herself down. "It's fine, it'll definitely be fine." Zhang Jiasen was so powerful, and there was still Miao Miao Miao. Miao 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 loved Zhang Jiasen so much, she would definitely bring Zhang Jiasen back. Zhang Jiasen had the Miao family behind him. As long as the Miao family didn't pursue this matter, everything would be fine. Shui Man couldn't figure out how the matter had been exposed. She was even more afraid that she would be implicated. Just as Shui Man was about to leave with a suitcase in each hand, she heard the sound of the door being unlocked. Shui Man was shocked. Only she and Zhang Jiasen had the keys to this house. Could it be that Zhang Jiasen had returned? The door opened and a few men walked in. When they saw Shui Man, they said directly, "You must be Shui Man. You are suspected of concealing your crimes and money laundering. You can't take anything from this house." Shui Man knew that Zhang Jiasen was corrupt, but she didn't call the police. She covered up for Zhang Jiasen and used the money that Zhang Jiasen obtained illegally to buy things, buy jewelry, and help Zhang Jiasen transfer his assets. This constituted a crime of money laundering. When Miao 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 heard this string of accusations, she shook her head in horror and said, I didn't commit any crime. Now we are pursuing the stolen goods according to the law. You can't take the things in this house away. Also, you are under arrest, the police said to Shui Man. The policeman reached out to take Shui Man's suitcase. Shui Man grabbed the handle of the suitcase tightly and said, "These things are all mine. Why can't I take my things away? Everything in this house will be seized." The leading policeman looked at Shui Man and said to the others, "Lock them up. Put these things away and wait for the court to seize them." Shui Man was escorted into the police car. She was so scared that tears streamed down her face. However, in the eyes of the police, Shui Man was now a criminal. No matter how pitiful she was, no one would sympathize with her. Shui Man was locked up in the detention center. She had to face criminal detention. Shui Man was terrified. What was she going to do for the rest of her life after such a thing happened? Also, her relationship with Zhang Jiasen was exposed. Everything happened too suddenly. Shui Man was terrified. What should she do? How did the police find Tang Qinming's house? While Ning Shu was cooking the medicinal cuisine at home, Father Miao received a call from the company's secretary. He knew that Zhang Jiasen had been taken away by the police. He said to Ning Shu, "It's not good to make such a big deal out of it. It's bad for the company." Ning Shu didn't care at all. "Dad, are you going to deal with it in private? Zhang Jiasen is that kind of person. Even if he moves out of the Miao family, he can still do well in other places." Ning Shu wanted Zhang Jiasen to take the blame for this crime and follow him for the rest of his life. With a criminal record of embezzlement, which company would dare to hire Zhang Jiasen? Who would dare to hire an employee who drank the company's blood and stole the company's flesh? Moreover, corruption and bribery were only the first wave. There were more things waiting for Zhang Jiasen. Father Miao nodded. "Yes, we can't let him off so easily. I didn't agree to the two of you getting married. This won't happen now." Ning Shu served the medicinal cuisine to Father Miao. Ning Shu nodded and said, "At that time, I was blinded by dog shit." Father Miao was speechless. Father Miao didn't even have the appetite to eat the medicinal cuisine when he heard about dog shit. Ning Shu didn't visit Zhang Jiasen. Instead, he went to the company to take charge of the overall situation. The company was in chaos now. Ning Shu took over the position of general manager and began to stabilize the company. This time, without Zhang Jiasen's interference, he had to take full control of the company. Ning Shu, who was working, received a call from an unknown number. When he picked it up, he heard Zhang Jiasen's voice. "Miao, it's me. I'll make it short. I didn't take any bribes. You have to help me." Zhang Jiasen's voice was very tired. There was a slight tremble in his voice, but overall, he sounded relatively calm. Ning Shu laughed silently. "Help you? Miao, are you listening to me? I don't have much time to call. You have to help me. Ask father-in-law to help me." Zhang Jiasen said anxiously. A voice came from the other end of the phone. "Time's up. Stop calling. Miao, I love you. You." Zhang Jiasen was hung up before he could finish his words. Ning Shu stared at the phone and shrugged his shoulders. He said, "I love you," and wanted to help you. How cunning. She was afraid that Zhang Jiasen didn't know that Shui Man had been arrested. If he knew, he wouldn't be so confident in asking her to save her. She just didn't know how Zhang Jiasen, who had fallen from the position of general manager, felt now. From heaven to hell, and now he might even face the disaster of being imprisoned. Could he bear it? He was about to succeed, but he missed it. How painful and vexing it must be. Now that she was busy with the company's affairs, how could she have time to save Zhang Jiasen? Even if Zhang Jiasen quibbled, there was irrefutable evidence. He couldn't run away. Ning Shu fired many people in the finance department. The people in the finance department were responsible for checking and filling in the loopholes. The Miao family was the owner of the company, but they were all on Zhang Jiasan's side. After firing these people, Ning Shu put the people he found in the finance department. He also fired many people who were above the position of supervisor. These people were all related to Zhang Jiasan. There was a relationship of interest. In fact, many people thought that the Miao family would be Zhang Jiasan's in the future. The Miao family didn't have a son to inherit the company, and their only daughter married Zhang Jiasan. This company should naturally be inherited by Zhang Jiasan. When choosing between the Miao family and Zhang Jiasan, they chose Zhang Jiasan and fought for the merit of supporting the emperor. It seemed that Zhang Jiasan chose Miao 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 as his target after careful consideration. It wasn't enough to just be a rich young lady. It had to be a rich young lady who had the right to inherit. Chapter 462. Everyone wanted to succeed, and if Zhang Jiasan could treat Miao 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 sincerely, it might be a happy marriage. But Zhang Jiasan used Miao 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 and even hurt her, taking everything away from her. Why did Zhang Jiasan feel wronged and feel that he had no dignity after hurting someone else? He was the one who made the decision to marry Miao Miao Miao, but Zhang Jiasan acted as if the Miao family forced him to give up his dignity and marry Miao Miao Miao. Zhang Jiasan destroyed Miao Miao Miao's happy life for that little bit of dignity and that little bit of male chauvinism. Miao Miao Miao, who had nothing, naturally didn't have that suffocating aura. No one said that he was a soft rice king anymore. After Zhang Jiasan succeeded, he used strong means to wash away his humiliating past. This kind of person was crazy. Zhang Jiasan called Ning Shu to help him, but Ning Shu forgot about it in a blink of an eye. He was busy with work every day and would only talk about it after he had complete control of the company. But Zhang Jiasan basically called Ning Shu every day to ask him to think of a way. In the beginning, he could still talk to Ning Shu warmly, but after a long time, Ning Shu's attitude was always perfunctory, and Zhang Jiasan's tone became very anxious and impatient. Zhang Jiasan directly asked Ning Shu to save him, but Ning Shu was still warm. After a few days, Zhang Jiasan's tone became humble, and he kept saying, "Miao Miao, I love you, you have to save me." Zhang Jiasan knew that the only person who could save him now was the Miao family and Miao Miao Miao's father, who had a wide network, and he was relying on Miao Miao Miao's love for him. Shui Manman's love couldn't save Zhang Jiasan now, and he had to rely on Miao Miao Miao's love. Ning Shu felt that it was ironic. A man like Zhang Jiasan was really a woman's misfortune, and she had to run as far away as possible from such a man. Ning Shu answered with his mouth. There was still more than a month before Zhang Jiasan's trial. In this month, the police station had to collect all kinds of evidence and appeal. Once it went to court, Zhang Jiasan's crime would be confirmed. There would be an indelible stain in his file, and he might even go to jail. Therefore, Zhang Jiasan wanted Ning Shu to get him out of here before the court session started. He wanted to minimize the problem as much as possible. If I can kill you, I definitely won't let you live. Let you out? How is that possible? Ning Shu laughed coldly. Zhang Jiasan wanted to call Ning Shu to go to the police station to watch over him. There were some things he wanted to say to Ning Shu, but there was a time limit to the phone call, so he couldn't explain it clearly. Besides, some things were completely different over the phone than in person. Zhang Jiasan wanted to rely on Miao Miao Miao's love for him to soften her heart when she saw him in such a sorry state. Ning Shu just laughed twice and walked to the window. He saw Zhang Jiasan's family members making a scene at the company's entrance. Zhang Jiasan's mother was used to making a scene. She sat at the door and cried. However, this time, she cried more sadly than when Tan Heyu was caught. Zhang Jiasan was her flesh and blood. Not only Zhang Jiasan's mother came, but the whole family also came. Zhang Xiaomei and her brother, Zhang Wenlan, was holding her daughter in her arms. Zhang Wenlan was crying silently, hugging her daughter and crying. To be honest, Ning Shu didn't like Zhang Wenlan very much. She was always so weak and always cried in front of the child. She didn't want to leave any shadow on the child. She always made herself look so miserable. Just looking at her was unbearable. Zhang Jiasen's mother's favorite thing to do was to put a bucket of shit on Ning Shu's head. She sat on the ground, slapped the ground, and wailed loudly. Her daughter-in-law was a black-hearted person. She sent her husband and brother-in-law to the police station and locked all the men in her husband's family in the police station. There were people coming and going at the company's entrance. They were all watching the Zhang family, especially when they heard Zhang Jiasen's mother scolding the company's general manager. They were all very gossipy. Ning Shu asked his secretary to call the family in. Zhang Jiasen's mother's method was hurting others and herself. To be honest, this kind of harm didn't hurt Ning Shu much. However, Ning Shu had an idea in his mind. The family was sent to the living room. Ning Shu walked in and saw Zhang Jiasen's mother wiping her nose, then flinging her snot on the wall. She then wiped her hands on her shoes. Ning Shu was speechless. Seeing Ning Shu walk in, the Zhang family's faces all turned green. Even Zhang Xiaomei knew the seriousness of this matter. Without her brother, she wouldn't have the money to buy good things. There were too many good things in this city, but they also required a lot of money. Zhang Xiaomei said to Ning Shu, "Sister Miao, how did my brother get taken away?" Ning Shu said calmly, "He embezzled the company's money and was reported." "Embezzled the company's money? You and Jiasen are married, so your family. This company is also considered Jiasen's. How can taking money from your own family be considered embezzlement?" Zhang Jiasen's father said coldly. "This is not embezzlement at all. Daughter-in-law, now is not the time to be angry with us. The most important thing now is to get Jiasen out." Compared to Zhang Jiasen's mother, who was wailing and blaming Ning Shu, Zhang Jiasen's father's attitude was obviously much better. When Tan Heyu was locked up, Zhang Jiasen's father condescendingly asked her to let him go. But now, his attitude was much more amiable. Obviously, in Zhang Jiasen's father's heart, Zhang Jiasen was the most important person in this family. It was also possible that Zhang Jiasen's mother was playing the bad cop, and he was playing the good cop. Ning Shu didn't care what these people were thinking. She said, "I really can't do anything about this. Jiasen is my husband. Naturally, I want him to be released. And this matter will cost a lot of money." Ning Shu spread her hands. "I don't know how much it will cost. I have no idea." "Then you spend the money. Isn't your family rich?" Zhang Jiasen's mother said directly to Ning Shu. Hearing Zhang Jiasen's mother say this, the other Zhang family members didn't say anything. Obviously, they all thought the same. Ning Shu narrowed her eyes. She always felt that Zhang Jiasen's mother was shrewish and uneducated. She said whatever she wanted. However, Zhang Jiasen's mother's role was to test other people's bottom line and let Zhang Jiasen's father, who was the head of the family, know what to do. Just like now, Zhang Jiasen's mother directly said that the Miao family should pay to get Jiasen out. Her words were direct and unacceptable, but Zhang Jiasen's father couldn't say it out loud. This family already had a fixed way of living, and everyone consciously maintained this way of living. "Daughter-in-law, Jiasen is still suffering in the prison. Let's get him out first. Nothing else is more important than him." Seeing that Ning Shu didn't say anything, Zhang Jiasen's father sighed and said, "When Jiasen is released, you guys should live a good life. If the first child's surname is Miao, then so be it. After all, he is a child of the Zhang family and the Miao family." Zhang Jiasen's father was now negotiating with Ning Shu. Chapter 463. Zhang Jiasen's father said that the first child should be named Miao. Ning Shu expressed that she didn't want Zhang Jiasen anymore, and she still wanted to have a child with Zhang Jiasen. Why did the Zhang family feel that they had to have Zhang Jiasen? Without the halo that the Miao family gave Zhang Jiasen was worthless. He didn't have money, and his character wasn't good. The Zhang family felt that they should be faithful to Zhang Jiasen, no matter what he was like. Ning Shu found it hilarious. She felt like she had returned to ancient times, where women had to follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Even though times were changing, some ideas were still deeply rooted. In some places, women couldn't even eat at the table. No matter when, there were always thick shackles on women. Women nowadays might not live as happily as those women in ancient times. Women nowadays had to take care of their family and work to give birth and raise children. Weren't women supposed to hold up half the sky? Now, I'll let you hold up half the sky. When Zhang Jiasen's mother heard that the child's surname was Miao, her face turned ugly. Her lips moved, but she didn't say anything. She obviously didn't dare to challenge Zhang Jiasen's father's authority as the head of the family. The Zhang family looked at Ning Shu, obviously waiting for Ning Shu's answer. Ning Shu was about to explode. What was this? Spending money to get Zhang Jiasen out, then carrying him for 10 months, enduring the pain of labor, and giving birth to a child with the surname Miao? Was this a great gift? What the fuck? Ning Shu took a deep breath and said, "Okay, but the company doesn't have much money, so you'll have to fork out some money." "We don't have money," Zhang Jiasen's mother said firmly. Ning Shu said indifferently, "Then there's no other way. Because the design drafts were stolen, the factory can't operate, but we still have to pay the workers. The company doesn't have much money left. If you want to save Jiasen, this money isn't enough. I also want to save him, but the conditions don't allow it." Ning Shu spread out his hands and said, "If it doesn't work, let Jiasen go to jail for a few years." Zhang Jiasen's mother immediately frowned and pointed at Ning Shu, scolding, "You dark-eyed woman, how can you talk about your husband like that? How can Jiasen go to jail?" Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen's mother. She was thinner than before. Her cheekbones were high, her eyes were sunken, and her hair was more white than before. Even though she was talking to Ning Shu angrily, he could still feel that she was weak and afraid. Zhang Jiasen's mother was a bluff, a person who bared her teeth and brandished her claws. Ning Shu ignored the clamoring Zhang Jiasen's mother. Zhang Jiasen's mother was a woman, but she absolutely supported male chauvinism. She even asked her daughter and daughter-in-law to prioritize men. In particular, she asked Ning Shu, her daughter-in-law, to prioritize her son. It would be even better if she could be humble. Ning Shu was left speechless by this strange idea. Zhang Jiasen's mother actually didn't have much say in the family. All the decisions were in the hands of Zhang Jiasen's father. Growing up in such an environment, Zhang Jiasen was a male chauvinist. Even though Miao Miao treated Zhang Jiasen very well and didn't look down on him because of his family background, Zhang Jiasen felt that his pride was insulted and denied everything Miao 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 had. "Daughter-in-law, our family really doesn't have money. At most, we can only take out 100,000 yuan, Zhang Jiasen's father said. 100,000 yuan. It seemed that Zhang Jiasen had really embezzled a lot of money from the Zhang family. Moreover, Ning Shu believed that 100,000 yuan was definitely not Zhang Jiasen's father's bottom line. Ning Shu shook her head and said, "How can 100,000 yuan be enough? Jiasen embezzled a huge sum of 7 to 8 million yuan. This matter isn't so easy to solve. If we can fix these loopholes, this matter will definitely be left unsettled. A few million? How can our family have a few million yuan? Sister Miao, your family is so rich, can't you take out this much money?" When Zhang Xiaomei heard that it was a few million yuan, she almost jumped up. Even if they sold themselves, they wouldn't be able to gather that much money. "Dad, why don't we let brother?" Before Zhang Xiaomei could finish her sentence, Zhang Jiasen's father's face immediately turned serious. "That's your brother. No matter what, we have to save your brother. Obviously, Zhang Xiaomei meant to let her brother go to jail for a few years in exchange for a few million yuan. Actually, it was quite worth it. Not many people could earn 7 to 8 million yuan in a few years. It was close to 10 million yuan. Ning Shu listened silently at the side. Zhang Jiasen's father, Ning Shu, said firmly, "No matter what, we have to save him. How about this, in the future, if a boy takes your surname, your first child will also take your surname, and 2 children will take the surname Miao." Ah Siba, from the sound of it, they were going to have more than 2 children. If 2 of them took the surname Miao, then one of them would take the surname Zhang. Damn, Ning Shu wiped his cold sweat. Ning Shu felt that it was simply inconceivable to use this kind of thing to negotiate. Without Zhang Jiasen, they could also have children. They could go to the sperm bank to choose the best sperm. The children they gave birth to would definitely belong to them. Why would they need such a gift from you? Ning Shu grinned and said, "How about this, don't we still have a house at home? Sell this house, and I will give you the rest of the money. How about that?" Ning Shu meant to sell the house that Miao Miao's father bought for Miao Miao and Zhang Jiasen. This won't do. Zhang Jiasen's father directly objected. A house was the foundation of a family. Even if they sold everything they had, they wouldn't be able to buy a house. Wasn't this telling others that this family couldn't survive? Although Zhang Jiasen's father was from the countryside, he was still very clear about some things. It wasn't easy to own a house in this city. Ning Shu said faintly, "But we need money now. When we have more money, we will buy a new house. Whether you save them or not, it's up to you." Zhang Jiasen's father frowned and smoked. The whole living room was filled with smoke, and the smell of smoke was uncomfortable. In the end, Zhang Jiasen's father made the decision to buy a house. Ning Shu smiled faintly. The house soon had a buyer, but the price was very low. The original 2 million plus decorations and furniture was directly suppressed to 1 million. 1 million was still a long way from 7 to 8 million, but Zhang Jie's father still decided to sell it. The rest of the money would be paid by Ning Shu. She was the one who said that she would pay for the rest of the money. The house was quickly sold, but it returned to Ning Shu. This time, only Miao Miao's name was on the property certificate, and Zhang Jiasen's name was no longer there. This house was no longer the joint property of Zhang Jiasen and Miao Miao after their marriage. The mansion was sealed, and he didn't have a share in this house. The things that he had worked hard for the past 2 years were gone. Zhang Jiasen had nothing now, and he had to face the disaster of being imprisoned. Ning Shu put away the property certificate and smiled faintly. Chapter 464. Since the house had been sold, the Zhang family naturally couldn't stay in the house. Zhang Jiasen's mother looked at the nice furniture in the house and wanted to move them away. Zhang Jiasen's father scolded her directly. These things already belonged to someone else. Besides, where would they be placed if they were moved away? Zhang Jiasen's mother's eyes were red. Her face was trembling from the pain. These things were all her sons. The Zhang family rented an ordinary house in a small district. They would only return to the countryside after Zhang Jiasen's matter was settled. During this period, Zhang Jiasen's father's back was hunched. As the head of the family, he was under a lot of pressure, especially when his son, whom he was proud of, was involved in such a thing. When the Zhang family returned to the village, they were disgraced and had to face the gossip of the villagers. What a sin! The day before the court session, Ning Shu went to the police station to see Zhang Jiasen. When he saw Zhang Jiasen again, Ning Shu almost couldn't recognize him. Zhang Jiasen was wearing a prison uniform. His beard had grown out, and he had lost a lot of weight. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair, which used to be neatly combed, was now messy and hung in front of his forehead, almost covering his eyes. Zhang Jiasen now looked very gloomy and anxious, like a trapped beast. Zhang Jiasen was very agitated when he saw Miao Miao, which made his eyes even redder. Miao Miao, why are you only here now? After you were arrested, the company was in chaos. I went to take charge. Ning Shu asked Zhang Jiasen, how have you been? Zhang Jiasen rubbed his forehead. He wanted to reach out and grab Ning Shu's hand, but it was separated by bulletproof glass. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu gently. Miao Miao, I can explain this matter to you. As for the house in Thompson Residence, I bought it. I want to give you a home. I built this home for you. Ning Shu was speechless. Miao Miao, please believe me. Zhang Jiasen tried hard to suppress the wild beast in his heart. Miao Miao was now his life-saving straw. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen with an aggrieved expression. But Secretary Shui lives in Thompson Residence. Did you really buy this house for me? There's only your name on it. Zhang Jiasen furrowed his brows tightly. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared fixedly at Ning Shu. Was this your dad's idea? Your father has been checking the accounts recently. Zhang Jiasen had been thinking about it repeatedly for the past month and felt that Miao Miao's father, Miao Ji, was the one who sent him in. Moreover, looking at the attitude of the police, it was obvious that they had solid evidence. This matter was done by Miao Ji, and perhaps Miao Miao was also aware of it. However, Zhang Jiasen was gambling on Miao Miao's feelings for him. However, it was clear that this feeling couldn't be gambled. Miao Miao, Zhang Jiasen wanted to find a reason to defend himself, but he didn't know what to say. Miao Miao, please believe me. Zhang Jiasen said weakly. Ning Shu smiled and said, don't worry, I will help you. Zhang Jiasen's face flashed with joy. Ning Shu said, I sold our wedding house to raise money to save you. The joy on Zhang Jiasen's face instantly froze. He furrowed his brows and said, Miao Miao, how could you sell the house? That's our wedding house. Zhang Jiasen's lips trembled twice. His face was ashen as he stared at Ning Shu. He bitterly smiled and asked, Miao Miao, did you do it on purpose? What do you mean on purpose? Father-in-law also agreed to buy the house. Ning Shu said with some astonishment. Zhang Jiasen's spirit had been sucked away. Right now, he really had nothing left. The things that he had worked so hard for were all gone. The things that gave him a foothold in this city were all gone. Zhang Jiasen's mind was in a trance. Not long ago, he was still the general manager who could call the wind and summon the rain. However, right now, he had nothing. His heart felt like it was being fried in a pan of oil. It was incomparably painful. Zhang Jiasen looked at the woman in front of him and asked, how much did you sell the house for? Ning Shu felt that it was funny that Zhang Jiasen was still concerned about this at this time. Ning Shu stretched out a finger. Zhang Jiasen stared at Ning Shu's finger. His face turned ugly. He suddenly slammed the table and said, this house also has my name. You didn't inform me and sold the house. Miao Miao, you did it on purpose. You did it on purpose. The house in such a good location should have been sold for 3 million. However, it was sold at a cabbage price. It was sold at 1/3 of the price. Ning Shu shrugged her shoulders and said, I really wanted to save you. Save me? Zhang Jiasen sneered. The Miao family was not so poor that they had to sell the house. It must be that old man Miao Ji who took the opportunity to take away the property in his hands. Zhang Jiasen was so angry that his body shook. He sat down and the blood in his eyes became more serious. Looking at Miao Miao's indifferent face, his heart became more and more terrified. He quickly said, Miao, I really love you. When we get out, I will explain everything to you. Explain? There was no need for that. Ning Shu did not say anything and just looked at Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen's emotions became even more agitated. If it wasn't for the bulletproof glass separating them, Zhang Jiasen would have pounced on them. Zhang Jiasen looked a little crazy. He slammed the glass with his hand and opened and closed his mouth. Ning Shu hung up the phone and could not hear what he said. Because Zhang Jiasen's emotions were too agitated, he was suppressed by the people in the detention center. Zhang Jiasen violently resisted. He kept looking at Ning Shu and roared at Ning Shu. However, through the glass, it was impossible to hear what he was saying. Ning Shu felt as if he was watching a pantomime show. Zhang Jiasen was finally dragged away. His eyes were filled with blood, especially when he saw the indifferent Ning Shu. His expression was filled with despair and resentment. He looked at Ning Shu with eyes full of resentment. Facing such a gaze, Ning Shu felt very happy. Knowing that you are suffering, I am relieved. Ning Shu went to see Xue Man again. However, he did not meet Xue Man. Instead, he found out from the police who interrogated Xue Man. Xue Man had all kinds of branded goods, bags, cosmetics, clothes, shoes, perfume, beauty cards, and all kinds of other things. It was estimated to be more than 1 million yuan. These were all blood sucked from the Miao family. Counting all the miscellaneous things, Zhang Jiasen had earned more than 10 million yuan in the past 2 years. He was really thinking of ways to empty out the Miao family. Not only would Zhang Jiasen go to jail, Xue Man would also face criminal detention. Moreover, her things would no longer be hers. They would become stolen goods. Like I said, everything that you have eaten must be spat out. One by one, they dug out the flesh and drank the blood of the Miao family. They even laughed at Miao's stupidity behind her back. Miao family is rich, so they should be treated like this. Do they still think that they are robbing the rich to give to the poor? Are they enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens? Ning Shu would not let Zhang Jiasen off, nor would he let Xue Man off. Zhang Jiasen's actions were vile, but Xue Man's actions were equally disgusting. Perhaps after Miao's death, Xue Man and Zhang Jiasen openly got together. Just like what Zhang Jiasen said, they had a cute child. They snuggled together in the garden and watched the child play. It was a happy family. Chapter 465. The next day was the court session. Ning Shu arrived at the entrance of the court early in the morning. After all, he was the general manager of a company. The embezzlement of tens of millions attracted some reporters from small newspapers. This was Ning Shu's goal. The corruption of a manager was different from the corruption of a general manager. If half of the person in charge of a company embezzled the company's money, the impact would be greater. Also, she wanted to put the complacent Zhang Jiasen behind bars and expose his evil deeds in front of everyone. Today's drama would definitely be exciting. Not only did Ning Shu come, but the Zhang family also came. Even Zhang Xiaomei's twin brother, who was addicted to the internet, came. The Zhang family looked at Ning Shu with disdain. Ning Shu didn't care at all. He found a seat in the gallery and sat down. The Zhang family sat a little far from Ning Shu. Obviously, they didn't want to sit with Ning Shu. Soon, Zhang Jiasen was handcuffed and was taken to the dock by the armed police. He was wearing a prisoner's vest. Seeing Zhang Jiasen come out, the Zhang family was very excited. Zhang Jiasen's mother saw her son being treated like this. Her cheeks were tightly clenched and her face was trembling. Zhang Jiasen's father had a serious face. He touched his waist and found that he didn't bring his pipe. Zhang Jiasen's condition wasn't very good. He kept his head down and the front of his hair covered his eyes. In particular, the camera flashes made Zhang Jiasen lower his head even more. Ning Shu looked at the current Zhang Jiasen with a gloomy and cold aura. The prosecutor's office would file a complaint against Zhang Jiasen. Then, the jury and the judge would decide on Zhang Jiasen's crime. Zhang Jiasen's crime was set in stone. However, the process still had to be done and various kinds of evidence were presented. From the beginning to the end, Zhang Jiasen didn't say a word. He seemed to be out of it. Maybe he didn't care about his future. His whole body was calm and had a frightening gloomy aura. Ning Shu couldn't understand what Zhang Jiasen was thinking. Although it was a process, it still needed witnesses and material evidence. When he heard about the witness, Zhang Jiasen's body moved. Witness, who is this witness? Ning Shu was also curious. The armed police brought Shui Man Man up. When he saw Shui Man Man, Ning Shu suddenly laughed. Was Shui Man Man going to be a witness? Are you going to testify against Zhang Jiasen? Oh, this is the love between Zhang Jiasen and Shui Man Man. Zhang Jiasen turned his head and saw Shui Man Man. He was stunned. Obviously, he was shocked by Shui Man Man's arrival. Zhang Jiasen's face trembled as he stared at Shui Man Man. Shui Man Man looked flustered. When she met Zhang Jiasen's gloomy eyes, she immediately looked away, her body trembling slightly. Shui Man Man knew that she had let Zhang Jiasen down by doing this, but she could only do this to reduce her punishment. She was a girl, she couldn't go to jail. She would be 30 years old when she came out of jail. Who would want a woman who had been in jail? What should she do for the rest of her life? She was struggling in her heart. She didn't want to betray Zhang Jiasen, but at this point, she and Zhang Jiasen had no future. It was impossible for her and Zhang Jiasen to be together. Zhang Jiasen still had Miao 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 to help him, but what about her? Her parents despised her and didn't come to see her until now. She had nowhere to go. Shui Man Man had already made up her mind, but when she faced Zhang Jiasen, she still felt terrified and ashamed, especially when she saw Zhang Jiasen in such a sorry state. While feeling ashamed, Shui Man Man also confirmed her inner thoughts. Shui Man Man took a deep breath and said, "Judge, I can testify that Zhang Jiasen took advantage of his position in the company and embezzled a lot of the company's money. He sold the goods at a low price and quoted a high price. Some of the suppliers even bribed Zhang Jiasen. There are even accounts in the safe of Thompson Residential Residence." "Then how do you know?" the judge asked. Shui Man Man bit her lips and took a deep breath before saying, "I'm Zhang Jiasen's mistress. He has a lot of things to tell me." "Gotcha, gotcha." The reporters pressed their shutters fiercely. This kind of nude news was much more attractive than a simple corruption case. The drama of being accused by his mistress and becoming enemies was really explosive. Anyway, Shui Man Man said everything in one go, which made Zhang Jiasen burn with anger. Zhang Jiasen rushed to Shui Man Man at lightning speed. He reached out his hand and grabbed Shui Man Man's neck. He shouted fiercely, "Shui Man Man, you dare to betray me, you bitch." Shui Man Man's face turned purple from Zhang Jiasen's grip. She struggled and tried to pry Zhang Jiasen's hand away. The armed police at the side quickly pulled Zhang Jiasen away, but Zhang Jiasen refused to let go of Shui Man Man's neck. Shui Man Man's eyes had already rolled back. Zhang Jiasen bent his fingers and almost sank them into Shui Man Man's neck. Seeing that something was wrong, the armed police took out a stun baton and hit Zhang Jiasen's body. Zhang Jiasen's whole body trembled from the electric shock. His hand weakly let go of Shui Man Man's neck. Shui Man Man fell to the ground, gasping for breath and coughing violently. Zhang Jiasen looked at Shui Man Man with eyes full of resentment and hatred. When he was dragged away by the armed police, he even kicked Shui Man Man. Shui Man Man was kicked to the ground and coughed until tears and snot were all over her face. "Silence, silence." The judge banged the gavel and asked the armed police to take the battered Shui Man Man away. Ning Shu looked at this scene. Because of interests, they would also fall apart because of interests. Zhang Jiasen and Shui Man Man each had their own selfish motives. When a disaster came, husband and wife would fly away separately. Not to mention Zhang Jiasen and Shui Manman's relationship with no guarantee. Oh my, it's too comfortable, too cool. He liked to watch such a show. The two people who were hugging each other and were incomparably affectionate immediately turned hostile and ruthless. They weren't so faithful. Ning Shu wasn't surprised by Shui Manman's decision at all. Shui Manman and Zhang Jiasen were both very selfish people. No matter what happened, the first thing they would think of was themselves. This was normal. People were selfish, but these two people were extremely selfish. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen. His expression was even more defeated. In addition, he was hit by the stun baton just now, so he was very dispirited and powerless. That damn bitch, that rotten-ass bitch, she actually treated Jiasen like this. Zhang Jiasen's mother, who was sitting in the gallery, kept cursing Shui Manman. She felt very sorry for Zhang Jiasen. If it wasn't for Zhang Jiasen's father holding her back, she would have run to the dock. The Zhang family's expressions were very bad. Zhang Jiasen's father looked at Ning Shu. Obviously, he wanted Ning Shu to save Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen's situation was very bad now. He was being accused by his mistress. Zhang Jiasen's father wiped his face. His expression was ashen. He blamed Zhang Jiasen in his heart for not being able to control his crotch. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. Chapter 466. The Zhang family didn't know that Zhang Jiasen had a mistress until now, but this mistress actually accused Zhang Jiasen, which made the Zhang family feel very uncomfortable. Since she was Zhang Jiasen's woman, she shouldn't have done such a thing. Especially Zhang Jiasen's mother, who felt that Shui Manman was really disgraceful. It seemed that no one had considered Ning Shu's feelings. Her husband cheated on her, and no one cared about her feelings. Ning Shu smiled. In the Zhang family, the daughter-in-law was the lowest and most undignified creature. Above her was her sister-in-law, her brother-in-law, and then her husband, Zhang Jiasen. Above her were her parents-in-law who had absolute authority. In this family, people could be divided into different ranks, and Miao 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 was the lowest. She was an outsider. The trial continued. Zhang Jiasen was sentenced to 10 years in prison for accepting bribes, and the amount of bribes was more than 100,000 yuan, and more than 10 million yuan. All the stolen money was confiscated. Moreover, Shui Manman was guilty of concealing the crime and helping to dispose of the stolen goods. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and 2 years in prison because she took the initiative to provide evidence. Hearing this sentence, Zhang Jiasen's mother immediately stood up and roared, "No, my son only took money from his wife's family. How is this corruption?" In the Zhang family's view, Zhang Jiasen used their family's money, and the Miao family's money was Zhang Jiasen's. Silence, people outside the court are not allowed to make noise. If this happens again, you can't stay in the gallery. The judge said expressionlessly as he knocked the gavel. Zhang Jiasen's mother's face was dark red, especially when many reporters were taking photos of her. Zhang Jiasen's mother was at a loss and stood there blankly. Zhang Jiasen's father pulled her to sit down with a livid face. Zhang Jiasen's mother sat on the chair and her face was twisted in pain, but she didn't dare to say anything. Zhang Jiasen turned to look at his family. When he turned back, he saw Ning Shu sitting in the corner and was stunned. Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasen's eyes met, and Zhang Jiasen immediately looked away in embarrassment. Obviously, Zhang Jiasen felt embarrassed because of the matter between him and Shui Manman. Zhang Jiasen turned his head, but Ning Shu could see that his body was trembling slightly and his figure was slightly bent. Was he embarrassed to face her? If he could do it, why couldn't he face it? Even Zhang Jiasen felt embarrassed. 10 years in prison. Ning Shu smiled. Corruption and bribery were felonies. If Miao's father wanted to settle it privately, Zhang Jiasen would naturally be fine. However, if he took it seriously, Zhang Jiasun would have to bear the consequences. This was just corruption and bribery. What if there was another case of instigating others to commit a crime? He wanted to expose Zhang Jiasun's evil deeds under the sun and let the world see what a beast Zhang Jiasun was. Cheating in marriage, poisoning his father-in-law, corruption, taking bribes, and keeping mistresses. Such a person was still successful in the end and was even respected by others. After the verdict was over, Zhang Jiasun was taken away. Zhang Jiasun's legs were a little weak, so he was helped down by 2 armed police officers. Zhang Jiasun's gaze was fixed on Ning Shu's body. Zhang Jiasun's aura was restrained, and he looked very calm. He didn't look like someone who was going to face 10 years in prison. Ning Shu was surprised by Zhang Jiasun's calmness. Zhang Jiasun was not an ordinary person. After the trial ended, a new verdict was immediately issued. Zhang Jiasun was brought up again. Everyone was stunned. The reporters who were about to leave immediately came back. Zhang Jiasun's face was a little pale, but he was still calm. However, the Zhang family was at a loss. 10 years in prison had already made the Zhang family despair, but what was going on? This time, the prosecutor's office was accusing Zhang Jiasun of instigating others to commit a crime. The surrounding people were in an uproar. The reporters pressed the shutter. They thought it was an insignificant piece of news, but Zhang Jiasun had done so many things. It was a big piece of news with all kinds of information. When Zhang Jiasun heard the accusation, his pupils shrank. He quickly turned to look at Ning Shu. Ning Shu and Zhang Jiasun's eyes met. Zhang Jiasun narrowed his eyes slightly. A flash of understanding flashed across his face. Then, he turned around and stopped looking at Ning Shu. Zhang Jiasun's mother sobbed softly. She didn't dare to make a sound. Zhang Jiasun's father's face was ashen. He looked a lot older. Aunt Ping, who was wearing a prison uniform, was brought in by the armed police. Aunt Ping was very thin. The prison uniform was empty on her body. Her hair was white. She was only 50 years old, but she looked like she was about to die. Aunt Ping said disheartenedly, Zhang Jiasun asked me to drug Miao Ji's medicinal food. This kind of drug won't be discovered even if it's eaten. If it succeeds, Zhang Jiasun promised to let my son follow him. He will nurture my son. I thought that the Miao family would definitely belong to Zhang Jiasun in the future. I wanted to take a gamble. I'm just a nanny. For my son's future, I can only take the risk. Aunt Ping saw Zhang Jiasun's success, so she wanted to let her son take a shortcut. Zhang Jiasun was originally just a person in the mountains, but because of the Miao family, he walked to the peak of life. Even a nanny like Aunt Ping felt that the Miao family would belong to Zhang Jiasun in the future, let alone the people in the company. Many of the higher-ups were biased towards Zhang Jiasun. Even if the Miao family's company wasn't big, where there were people, there would be underworld. Miao Miao was a useless girl. Everyone thought that Father Miao found a son-in-law like Zhang Jiasun to inherit the Miao family. Zhang Jiasun smoothly took over the company after Father Miao's death. In the face of Aunt Ping's accusation, Zhang Jiasun didn't refute and calmly accepted it. In this crime committed by Zhang Jiasun and Aunt Ping, Zhang Jiasun was the main culprit and Aunt Ping was an accomplice. Zhang Jiasun would face heavy punishment. Because of the nature of the crime, Zhang Jiasun was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Aunt Ping was sentenced to 4 years in prison. In other words, Zhang Jiasun would be sentenced to 18 years, which was close to 20 years. Zhang Jiasun's body trembled, but he quickly stabilized. He turned to look at Ning Shu. From the beginning to the end, Ning Shu's expression was indifferent. Zhang Jiasun's lips moved. Under the light, Zhang Jiasun's face was a little hazy. After the sentencing, Zhang Jiasun's mother couldn't control herself anymore and burst into tears. Zhang Jiasun didn't care about his mother's cries. Or rather, he couldn't care less. The reporters kept taking photos of Zhang Jiasun. Zhang Jiasen was a monster. After the trial ended, Zhang Jiasen was taken away. He looked at Ning Shu and his lips moved. Ning Shu looked at his mouth and saw that it was Miao Miao. Could it be that Zhang Jiasen still wanted him to save him at this point? Ning Shu thought that he was dreaming. After the trial ended, Ning Shu stood up and prepared to leave. There was still one more thing to settle. Daughter-in-law. Zhang Jiasen's father called out to Ning Shu. He stood up in a hurry and his body swayed. Fortunately, there was someone supporting him. Chapter 467. Zhang Jiasen's father called out to Ning Shu, and Ning Shu asked, "Didn't you say that you wanted to save Jiasen? Why do you want him to go to jail for 20 years? Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu really did not know what to say. Zhang Jiasen wanted to kill Miao Miao Miao's father, and now he still had the face to ask him why he did not save Zhang Jiasen. Don't they feel guilty and guilty? I tried to use the money to use my connections, but it was useless. Zhang Jiasen's matter is too serious. He wanted to kill my father." Ning Shu picked up his bag and left. Zhang Jiasen's father's face turned pale. This was no longer an in-law, but an enemy. Zhang Xiaomei pulled Ning Shu and said, "Has the 1 million yuan used up? This house belongs to my brother too. You should share the rest of the money with us." Ning Shu frowned. Looking at Zhang Xiaomei, was the Zhang family so heartless? Her brother was already in jail, and Zhang Xiaomei still had the mood to talk about the money for the house. Ning Shu bared his teeth and said, "It's all used up. There's not a single cent left. Miao Miao Miao, you just want to embezzle the rest of the money." Zhang Xiaomei said angrily. Ning Shu said indifferently, "This house is mine, and I have the right to use the money. If I say there's no more money, then there's no more money. So what do you want?" Zhang Xiaomei was fuming. Zhang Jiasen's mother had joined the team to collect the debt. More than 1 million yuan was spent in a few days. That's impossible. You black-hearted person, you want to embezzle Jiasen's money. Ning Shu sneered, opened the car door, and left. He could not be bothered to talk to these people. Back home, Miao's father, Ning Shu, asked, "How did the court deal with this? How did they deal with it?" "All of Zhang Jiasen's assets were confiscated, and he will be in jail for 18 years. Ning Shu said. Miao's father said coldly, "That's how it should be. Daughter, are you still unable to let go of Zhang Jiasen?" Seeing that Ning Shu's expression wasn't good, Miao Ying's father said anxiously, "Daughter, are you going to wait until Zhang Jiasen is 18 years old? How is this possible?" Ning Shu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why did she have to wait for Zhang Jiasen for 18 years? Since the original owner put forward such a task, it showed that she had already given up on Zhang Jiasen. Miao Miao Miao's brain must have been fried by a pig if she still continued to love and wait for Zhang Jiasen after killing her parents and causing her to lose everything, and her originally happy life was ruined by Zhang Jiasen. That's good. Quickly divorce Zhang Jiasen. There are many good men in this world other than Zhang Jiasen. Miao Ying's father said with heartache. Would his daughter be traumatized after marrying such a bastard? Or even be single for the rest of his life? Let's talk about men later. As for whether Miao 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 would come back to find happiness or heal herself after she left, it was up to Miao Miao Miao. Miao Ying's father's expression became even worse. He felt that his daughter's heart had been broken by that bastard Zhang Jiasen. The next morning, Ning Shu opened the newspaper and saw that Zhang Jiasen's name was on the front page. It was spreading Zhang Jiasen's evil deeds, especially how he poisoned his father-in-law. They said that Zhang Jiasen was a bastard in human skin. Anyway, Zhang Jiasen was now a household name in this city. Ning Shu put down the newspaper, ate breakfast, and prepared to go to work. Miao Ying's father stopped Ning Shu and said, "You don't have to go to work today. Have a good rest. There's always work to be done. But I have an important meeting today. Ning Shu said. Miao Ying's father's expression became even more worried. Meow meow, my precious daughter, if you're sad, just cry. You don't have to work so hard to numb yourself. Ning Shu was speechless. She wasn't sad at all. How did Miao Ying's father see that she was sad? Dad, I'm really not sad. Why should I be sad? I should be happy that we exposed Zhang Jiasen's true colors so early and didn't let him hurt us. Ning Shu patted Miao Ying's father's shoulder and said, Dad, don't worry. I'm not that weak. Just take it as a lesson. I've grown up now. I'm not sad. Really? Miao Ying's father didn't believe it. Ning Shu nodded. Really? Meow 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 had died once. It was time for her to grow up. Ning Shu went to the company to deal with his work. As soon as he arrived, he saw Zhang Jiasen's family making a scene at the company's entrance. Zhang Jiasen's mother cried and said that her evil daughter-in-law had embezzled the money from selling the house. Everyone in the company knew about Zhang Jiasen's matter. When they heard Zhang Jiasen's mother's words, they all showed a look of disdain. Zhang Jiasen was a poor man. His property had been confiscated. How could he let others embezzle the money from the house? Ning Shu felt that the Zhang family was quite thick-skinned. Zhang Jiasen had done such a thing and this family still had the nerve to come to the company. Ning Shu ignored them. After he finished his work, he went to the law firm and asked the lawyer to prepare a divorce agreement. Ning Shu put the divorce agreement in his bag and went to the detention center. Zhang Jiasen, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform, was brought out. Zhang Jiasen's head had been shaved and he was very thin. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen's bald head and felt a little disillusioned. She found it very funny. Zhang Jiasen with hair was very handsome. Zhang Jiasen without hair, tisk, when he saw Ning Shu, Zhang Jiasen's expression was very calm. He even showed a gentle smile to Ning Shu. This smile was completely different from Zhang Jiasen's usual affectionate smile. He was relaxed and relieved. Ning Shu frowned. She really couldn't understand Zhang Jiasen. He was very thoughtful. Meow meow. Zhang Jiasen called out to Ning Shu. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen. She wanted to hear what he had to say. Are you very tired at the company? You look thinner than before. Zhang Jiasen said indifferently as if he was chatting with a friend. However, it made Ning Shu's hair stand on end. This Zhang Jiasen was really strange. Ning Shu shook her head and said, It's okay. Meow meow, since you know everything, you must hate me. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't say anything. Of course, Meow 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 hated him. Zhang Jiasen smiled at Ning Shu. You look very different from before. The Meow Meow I know is not so strong. What caused you to change? When did you find out about this? You left me in the countryside. Ning Shu said indifferently. Sure enough. Zhang Jiasen took a deep breath. I became like this. One of the reasons I became like this is because of you. When Zhang Jiasen talked about this matter, he didn't have any resentment. His eyebrows were actually calm as he chatted with Ning Shu calmly. Ning Shu narrowed her eyes. This man, Zhang Jiasen, was really too unpredictable. His thoughts were as deep as the sea. It was really hard to imagine that a village kid from the countryside had such deep thoughts. Chapter 468. Ning Shu didn't want to argue with Zhang Jiasen. She took out the divorce agreement from her bag and pushed it in front of Zhang Jiasen. Sign it. You don't want to go to court again, right? Zhang Jiasen glanced at Ning Shu. He picked up the divorce agreement and looked at it. He laughed and signed the divorce agreement. He was very straightforward. This made Ning Shu very surprised. She hadn't even taken out her weapon or taken out the video of Zhang Jiasen and Shui Man rolling around together. He had already signed the agreement. It was so smooth that it was surprising. Ning Shu also signed the divorce agreement. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. Are you surprised that I divorced you so easily? Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and looked at Zhang Jiasen. Zhang Jiasen seemed to have let go of everything and didn't care about anything. Moreover, Zhang Jiasen had nothing now. He didn't have anything to lose. Ning Shu kept the divorce agreement and prepared to leave. Zhang Jiasen called out to Ning Shu. Miao Miao, sit down and talk to me. You probably won't come back to see me in the future. I don't think there's anything to talk about between us. Ning Shu looked at Zhang Jiasen and said. Aren't you curious why I did this to you and the Miao family? Zhang Jiasen asked Ning Shu. He looked at Ning Shu with a gentle gaze. Ning Shu sat down again. Zhang Jiasen said directly, Miao Miao Miao, if I say that I like you, you might not believe me. Ning Shu stared blankly at him, speechless. She regretted listening to Zhang Jiasen's nagging. If what Zhang Jiasen did to Miao 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 was love, then what was love about destroying Miao Miao Miao? Ning Shu could only chuckle. Then what she was doing to Zhang Jiasen was also out of love. She loved Zhang Jiasen. Let go of her hobby. Ning Shu's face trembled. Zhang Jiasen said, I knew you wouldn't believe me. I've known what my mission is since I was a child. My mission is to shoulder the responsibility of the Zhang family and make this impoverished Zhang family prosper. My father is very good to me because I'm smart and have good grades. My father is the most supportive of my studies. Studying is the best way out for a poor child. My success wasn't just my own success. It was the success of the family. You and the Miao family's existence would be my weakness and the others would say that I was successful because of the Miao Miao family. Ning Shu smiled silently. That's the truth. Zhang Jiasen was not angry. His expression was calm. I know this is the truth, so I want to erase this truth. Ning Shu was speechless. Come to think of it, I've never been myself in my entire life, not even for a day. I have too many things on me, but you're a person who's living a happy life. You're pure and beautiful. Everyone's heart yearns for and loves beautiful things, and I'm no exception. I like you in my heart, and I'll feel bad if I hurt you. Some words that are pretentious become true. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu. The most relaxing days of my life were actually in prison. Ning Shu stared blankly at him, speechless. Ning Shu felt that Zhang Jiasen was purposely saying this to block her heart. Miao Miao Miao, I once loved you, and I still love you. Zhang Jiasen clutched her heart. When Ning Shu heard this, she felt immense sorrow and pain. This was clearly the original owner's emotion. After experiencing an irreparable injury, hearing such words would only make one feel sorrow and hatred. Zhang Jiasen didn't deserve to say the word love. Ning Shu chanted the clear heart mantra in her heart, suppressing the emotions that were surging like a tidal wave. Only after a while did she calm down. Ning Shu felt that Miao 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 was really miserable. She had caused this result by a freak combination of factors. Zhang Jiasen was willing to sacrifice anything. Even though she said that she loved Miao Miao Miao, she still sacrificed Miao 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 in the end. Ning Shu said sarcastically, what about Shui Man? Shui Man, Zhang Jiasen laughed. How should I put it? Perhaps I can see my own shadow in Shui Man. It's as if I like myself, but in the end, I realize that I don't like myself. Ning Shu, you're crazy. In short, Zhang Jiasen, a person who was completely dark inside and out, liked the pure and kind Miao Miao Miao. However, Zhang Jiasen felt pressured when he was with Miao Miao Miao. To put it bluntly, he felt inferior. Then he killed Miao Miao Miao's family. What kind of fucking dog is this? Ning Shu felt that he had nothing more to say to this guy. He turned around and left. He had been chatting with a crazy person for a long time. Zhang Jiasen's mentality was not normal. Before his personality was complete, he was given a responsibility that was beyond his ability to bear. In order to achieve his goal, he was willing to sacrifice a lot for this responsibility that was deeply ingrained in his bones. But this was not a reason for Zhang Jiasen to hurt others. Zhang Jiasen was still a scumbag, very scumbag. Through hurting Miao Miao Miao, he satisfied the tyrannical pleasure in his heart, even if he liked Miao Miao Miao. Miao Miao. Zhang Jiasen grabbed Ning Shu's hand. Zhang Jiasen's hand was very cold. Ning Shu wanted to shake off Zhang Jiasen's hand, but Zhang Jiasen held it tightly. Ning Shu, move your damn hand away. Zhang Jiasen looked at Ning Shu and smiled. Miao Miao Miao, without me, you will definitely be very happy. Of course, without you, I will definitely be happy. Ning Shu gritted her teeth. If she did not meet Zhang Jiasen, Miao Miao Miao's life would not be so broken. Zhang Jiasen said again, I don't regret hurting you. If I had to do it again, I would do it again. Zhang Jiasen suddenly hugged Ning Shu. Miao Miao, I just don't know how to love you. Ning Shu. Ning Shu directly stepped on Zhang Jiasen's foot with her heel. Zhang Jiasen's expression did not change, as if he did not feel pain. Instead, he had a smile on his face. He let go of Ning Shu and said, you can leave. Fuck, Zhang Jiasen's style was really weird. Ning Shu turned and left. When she reached the door, she turned back and saw that Zhang Jiasen was still looking at her. His expression was very hazy, and there was a faint layer of light covering his body. Miao Miao. Zhang Jiasen's lips moved as he watched Ning Shu leave. Ning Shu walked out of the detention center and took a deep breath. Her heart was very uncomfortable. Even if she chanted the clear heart mantra, she could not suppress it. This was the original owner's emotion, the residual emotion in her body. This tragedy sounded like a joke. Now that Zhang Jiasen said that he liked Miao Miao Miao, that he loved Miao 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 in his heart, but he did not regret hurting Miao Miao Miao. Ning Shu only wanted to laugh. Love was such a beautiful word. If hurt was love, then Ning Shu would be speechless. Ding, found qualified soul body. Loading data. A cold mechanical voice sounded. Opening mission system space. Chapter 469. Zhang Jiasen committed suicide. Ning Shu was stunned when he heard the news. When he rushed to the detention center, he saw the dead Zhang Jiasen being carried out with a white cloth covering his body. The Zhang family was immersed in grief. When they saw Ning Shu, Zhang Jiasen's mother pounced on Ning Shu fiercely. Ning Shu dodged. You black-hearted woman. You forced your own man to death. Zhang Jiasen's mother pointed at Ning Shu and scolded him. Her face was full of hatred. Since I married you, the Zhang family has been plagued by all kinds of disasters. You are a jinx. Now even Jiasen has been killed by you. Why didn't you die, you scourge? Ning Shu said faintly, I have divorced him. Zhang Jiasen has nothing to do with me. Everyone in the Zhang family was stunned. Zhang Jiasen's father bent over and looked at Ning Shu with hatred. The son he was so proud of was gone. You're really the most ruthless and rebellious woman I've ever met. You divorced Jiasen the moment he fell from grace and now you're forcing him to his death. Ning Shu didn't take Zhang Jiasen's father's words to heart. Was she supposed to be a soft persimmon that could be bullied by anyone? Was she supposed to let her family be destroyed? Was it treason to protect her own things? The person who forced Zhang Jiasen to death was not me, but you. Ning Shu ignored the Zhang family. Zhang Jiasen's father, as the head of the family, was at least half responsible for Zhang Jiasen's death. Ning Shu watched Zhang Jiasen's body being carried into the crematorium car. The Zhang family glanced at Ning Shu and followed him into the car. Now, the Zhang family seemed to have been stripped of their backbone. Even when facing Ning Shu, they no longer had the confidence they had before. The cowardice in their bones was revealed. In the past, Zhang Jiasen would take care of everything in front of them. Now that Zhang Jiasen was dead, they had no one to rely on in this city. Not only did Zhang Jiasen have to fly up, but he also had to drag the Zhang family with him. Ning Shu entered the detention center and asked the guards how Zhang Jiasen died. The guard said that Zhang Jiasen had stabbed himself in the throat with a toothbrush handle. It was the kind of sharpened plastic toothbrush handle, and it didn't seem like it had been planned for a day. When Ning Shu heard this, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. How could he do this? In Ning Shu's heart, Zhang Jiasen was the kind of person who thought deeply and would not easily seek death. Perhaps Zhang Jiasen was tired and wanted to get rid of his responsibilities. It was also possible that the nearly 20 years in prison had made him hopeless. His life was already ruined. Ning Shu recalled that Zhang Jiasen had said that Miao 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 would be happy without him, so he committed suicide. Ning Shu shook his head. Zhang Jiasen wasn't the kind of person who would do everything for others. Miao 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 might be one of the factors. As for Zhang Jiasen's suicide, Ning Shu didn't feel anything. There was a cause and effect. Zhang Jiasen had caused the death of the original owner's family. Now, Zhang Jiasen was just atoning for his sins. Moreover, Zhang Jiasen had died just like that. Ning Shu felt that living in pain was the greatest torture for a person. Repeated torment was the most painful. Death was the end of all troubles. Death wasn't scary. Living in pain was scary. According to Ning Shu's wish, Zhang Jiasen had to be in prison for 20 years. When he came out, he would be 50 years old and struggling to survive. He didn't expect Zhang Jiasen to die just like that. Obviously, Zhang Jiasen also knew what his fate was. The Zhang family carried Zhang Jiasen's urn to the company's entrance and made a scene, saying that Ning Shu had forced him to die. She had forced him to die. Ning Shu didn't speak to Zhang Jiasen's mother who was making a scene. Instead, he said to Zhang Jiasen's father, "Zhang Jiasen and I are divorced. Moreover, I know that Zhang Jiasen gave you a lot of money. If you continue to make a scene like this, I will directly call the police and let the court re-examine the money Zhang Jiasen embezzled. Don't talk about asking me for money." Zhang Jiasen's father pursed his lips and glanced at Ning Shu. In the end, he still left and returned to the countryside. Moreover, it was time for Zhang Jiasen to be buried. Ning Shu couldn't let the Zhang family make a scene at the company's entrance. People sympathized with the weak. Seeing that the Zhang family's son had died and the white-haired people were so pitiful, they directly forgot how hateful Zhang Jiasen's actions were. Moreover, Ning Shu couldn't give them money. The Zhang family was like leeches. If he gave them money once, there would be a next time, and a next time. If they were weak once, they would think that you were in the wrong. They would drill into your blood vessels and suck your blood. Ning Shu knew that Zhang Jiasen's father had some money in his hands. However, he didn't intend to get the money back. Firstly, it wasn't much. Secondly, if he killed all of them, it wouldn't be good for the reputation of the original owner, Miao Miao Miao. If nothing went wrong, Miao 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 would be in charge of the company in the future. When doing business with others, if one's reputation was ruined, people would think that one's character was bad. Without Zhang Jiasen, the Zhang family was like a loach in a ditch, unable to become a dragon. Miao 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 had to deal with the Zhang family's matters by herself. Moreover, all the business knowledge that he had learned would be left in the mind of this body. Ho ho. Ning Shu let out a long breath. The mission this time could be considered completed. Miao Miao Miao's parents were still alive, but she was missing a husband. Ning Shu started to work without any distractions. He circled around the company, the Miao family's home, and the factory. Now that the company was tied together, there weren't any miscellaneous things. After confirming the absolute position of the Miao family in the company, the Miao family was the absolute master of the company. On the contrary, the employees didn't have to think too much about it. When Ning Shu had completely grasped the company's matters, she and Miao Miao Miao's mother would often go traveling. The two of them were like sisters, taking photos wherever they went. During the journey, Ning Shu felt that her heart was very calm. Even the clear heart incantation didn't have such an effect. Ever since Zhang Jiasen's matter broke out, especially the words that Zhang Jiasen said to her in the detention center, this body had been feeling depressed. However, during the journey, climbing the mountains, watching the sun rise in the east, standing by the sea, and following the ebb and flow of the tide, the depression in her heart was slowly disappearing. Yes, this world is very exciting. The pain that we imagine is actually not that painful. Ning Shu also felt very carefree. Diving in the ocean, walking in the desert, jumping from the sky, looking at the old things in the museum. Living was a kind of excitement. She had been working hard to live. Seeing countless worlds, walking through countless worlds. Perhaps she would be erased in the next mission, but at least she was alive at this moment. Ding, mission completed. Leaving the mission world. 2333's voice sounded. Ning Shu felt a wave of dizziness. When she woke up, she was already in the system space. Looking down, she found that her soul was stronger than before. Moreover, this mission didn't consume her soul. Instead, she felt that it was strengthened. Chapter 470. After completing a quest, his soul became stronger instead of weaker. This was something he had never encountered before. Ning Shu touched his body. It felt like he was touching jelly. His soul had indeed become stronger. Ning Shu was a little confused. He asked 2333, "Why do I feel like I didn't use up much of my soul in this world? I feel stronger than before." The purification of the soul is also a kind of cultivation. A person's soul is very strong. It is strong enough to resist temptation. It is tough and strong. It is not so fragile. 2333 explained. Ning Shu was a little surprised. She was a quest taker, but she was also a person with her own thoughts and feelings. It was probably because she was traveling in the quest world. Her mood was very relaxed. Now that she was back in the system space, she didn't feel very tired. It was not like before when she didn't want to do anything but sleep first. There was always a feeling of disgust and boredom, but she didn't feel that now. Ning Shu felt that this was a good idea. After the quest ended, she could stay in the quest world for a while and walk around. Not only could she relax, but she could also slowly heal the heartbreak of the client. The clients were all hurt, full of hatred and misery. If she could let go of some of it and start a new life, it would be better. She could relax herself and cultivate her soul. She could also help the client reduce some of the misery. It was a mutually beneficial thing. Don't be in such a hurry to send me back in the future. I'll come back when I say I'm back. Ning Shu said. Okay, but you can only stay in a world for 3 or 4 years. After a long time, the damage to your soul will be great. 2333 said. Ning Shu nodded. Let's see the points. Ning Shu's status panel appeared in front of him. Number, 23333 Name, Ning Shu, Beginner Quest Taker, Age, 27 points, 400,000 250,000 Soul, 200 HP, 60 Wisdom, 100 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Spirit, 120 Martial Strength, 55 Faith, 65 Aptitude, 26 Merit, 36 Skills, 5th Ring Spear Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Peerless Martial Arts, Beginner Business Management Knowledge Honorary Title, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Halo, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Sister Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Halo, Grass Blessing, Best Friend of a Lifetime, Meow Meow Meow's Blessing, Fulfill Meow Meow Meow's Wish. I don't want to be deceived by Zhang Jiasen anymore. I want to protect my father's business and make Zhang Jiasen, who originally had nothing, lose everything. Mission completion, 100 points. Obtained 250,000 points. Obtained 30 attribute points. Ning Shu saw that there were 250,000 points, 30 attribute points, and 5 points of faith. He also received the Best Friend of a Lifetime aura. Although he didn't know what this halo was for, he was still happy to get it. The harvest this time was not bad, and Ning Shu was satisfied. This Best Friend for Life aura is not bad. It can make others trust you more. 2333 said. So that's how it works. Ning Shu distributed the attribute points. Of the 30 attribute points, 15 points were allocated to intelligence, 10 points to force, and 5 points to aptitude. Ning Shu tried to add some merit points to his attribute points, but he realized that he could not add any. Faith and merit points are calculated by me. There are other ways to calculate them. You can't add these two attributes. Ning Shu nodded, and the attributes on the panel changed. Number 23333 Name, Ning Shu, Beginner Mission Enforcer, Age, 27 points, 650,000 Soul, 200 HP, 60 Wisdom, 10015 Charm, 3 Luck, 34 Spirit, 120 Force, 5510 Faith, 11 Aptitude, 265 Merit, 36 Skills, 5 Ring Spear Technique, Trash Fighting Technique, Beginner Peerless Martial Arts, Beginner Level Business Management Knowledge Honorary Title, War God Empress, Selfless Ancestor Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Model Worker, Chen Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura, Grass Blessing, Best Friend of a Lifetime. Meow Meow Meow's Blessing, my points have reached 500,000. I can open the virtual space. 2333 Ning Shu asked, do you want to open the virtual space? Ning Shu didn't ask what the virtual space was. Instead, he asked, do I need points? To become an intermediate mission enforcer, she needed 3 million points. 3 million. She had to save as much points as possible to become an intermediate mission enforcer. Then she could go to the intermediate plane to do missions and have more treasures. The cultivation plane and the immortal plane were all higher level planes. The laws there were stable and there were more treasures. I don't need points. This is a benefit. 2333 said. Ning Shu immediately said, open it. Wait a moment. I'll open the channel to the virtual space for you. 2333 said. After a while, a ring with a diameter of about 1 meter appeared on the ground. 2333 said, this is the passage to the virtual space. You need to go to the virtual space. Just step on the ring and it will send you to the virtual space. What's the virtual space? Ning Shu asked. It's a place for mission enforcers to communicate. It's specially created for mission enforcers to communicate. You can trade and buy all kinds of things inside. The system store basically has everything. Ning Shu was surprised. Then I'll meet a lot of mission enforcers there. Of course. This is a place specially created by the higher-ups for mission enforcers to communicate. Naturally, there will be a lot of mission enforcers. 2333 said. Ning Shu wanted to see what this virtual space looked like. She stepped into the virtual space's tunnel of pain and immediately felt a strong force pulling her body. It was as if she was falling rapidly, and her head was dizzy. When she opened her eyes again, she saw that she was standing on a street. The ground under her feet was green stone. It was the kind of stone that was very simple. However, it was very smooth and shiny, just like the floor tiles. The surrounding buildings were all in an ancient style. This was a city. It was very big. Ning Shu thought that she would see something beyond her imagination. Was this the result? There were all kinds of shops, tea houses, and restaurants on the street. People passed by. They were all souls. There were both men and women. The strength of the soul was different. Some were heavy, while others were thin and transparent. Ning Shu even saw a person's soul that was very old. His hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles. Ning Shu asked curiously, "Are mission enforcers that old?" "Of course not. This is because you've been in the mission world for too long. It's probably because you're at the peak of your power and can't bear to leave. Or maybe the mission is too difficult and you've spent too much time in the mission world. Don't think that your soul won't age. So I suggest that you don't stay in the mission world for more than 3 or 4 years. It's very harmful to your soul." 2333 explained to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded. "I'll remember." Just now, he saw that the person was very old and his soul was very thin. It looked like it was about to dissipate. He knew that 2333 said that for his own good. Chapter 471. Ning Shu had thought that the virtual space would be grand and majestic. Perhaps there would be flying saucers everywhere. He did not expect to see an ancient city. However, the people in the city were all dressed differently. Some wore ancient costumes, some t-shirts and shorts, some were in suits and leather shoes, and some were in animal skins. "I thought it would be an amazing place," Ning Shu said to 2333. "I don't know how long this virtual space has existed. This place is for the quest takers to interact with each other, not for them to enjoy themselves. This ancient architectural style is the best," 2333 said. Ning Shu looked at the quest takers passing by him. There were so many people coming and going. He sighed and said, "So many quest takers. Are there many? Compared to the vast and endless universe, these quest takers are just a drop in the ocean. Quest takers are far from enough. The beginner quest takers will be erased due to various reasons. The speed of their disappearance is faster than finding a qualified soul," 2333 said disapprovingly. Ning Shu asked doubtfully, "If there are so few qualified souls, why do they have to be erased? Can't they be given a chance?" "Pfft." 2333 snorted. "Letting you become a quest taker is giving you a chance. You must use cruel means to make the quest takers understand their position. If you fail, you will naturally be erased. This is a process of elimination. The strong survive, and the weak are eliminated. If you are given a chance to live, as long as you are not erased, you will have the ability to live forever." Ning Shu felt a chill down his spine. He did not want to dwell on this problem. The more he thought about it, the more troubled he became. Ning Shu toured the city. In this place, points were equivalent to money. Points could be used to buy many things. There were also some quest takers who set up their own stalls to sell things. However, most of them were bartering. Ning Shu saw that some of the quest takers had some rare treasures on their carpets. However, the things they wanted to trade were also rare. Ning Shu saw many treasures, but when he saw the price, he gulped silently. "Are the people in these shops also mission enforcers?" Ning Shu saw that many of the shop owners were souls. This leads to the problem of division of labor. Points are very important to mission enforcers, just like currency. Some people rely on doing business to earn points. They are not willing to do missions. As long as they can survive, there is no possibility of being erased. But people like this usually give up on becoming a high-level quest taker. Even if they have enough points, they won't be promoted. 2333 said, "There is a limit to how much they can survive. Ning Shu, there are more exciting worlds up there. You will meet more powerful people. Instead of being a frog in a well for the rest of your life, why don't you slowly climb up?" 2333 said. Ning Shu had always been determined to do quests. In a person's life, they had to have a goal and slowly work towards it. Moreover, doing quests would allow them to experience all kinds of worlds. It was much more interesting than staying in this virtual space. Ning Shu looked up at the restaurant in front of him and asked, "Can a soul still eat?" Seeing people going in and out of the restaurant, Ning Shu also wanted to go in. It is just to satisfy the appetite of the stomach. It is useless to eat. As long as you are a human, you will have an appetite. 2333 said casually. Ning Shu licked his lips. He had not eaten since he died. How could he eat the same thing as when he was using someone else's body when he entered a mission? Ning Shu walked into the restaurant. A waiter came to serve Ning Shu. He looked like a waiter in an ancient restaurant with a towel on his shoulder. This waiter was also a soul, but his soul did not look as strong as Ning Shu's. "I want to eat something," Ning Shu said. The waiter brought Ning Shu to a table. Ning Shu saw 3 women sitting at the table next to him. There were desserts and coffee on the table. Ning Shu did not expect the restaurant to have such a thing. She looked at the menu and ordered a roast duck and a few home-cooked dishes. The waiter Ning Shu said, "The total is 1,000 points. Please pay the bill first." Ning Shu was speechless. She didn't know how to pay the bill. "How do I pay?" Ning Shu asked. When Ning Shu said this, everyone looked at Ning Shu, especially the woman sitting at the table next to Ning Shu. She said directly, "So this is your first time in the virtual space, 2333, how do I pay?" Ning Shu asked in his mind. "You asked me this and that. I forgot to tell you. You need to get a points card. You can just pay with the card." Pay with a card? Okay, even the mainframe existed. It was normal to pay with a card. "Sir, this must be your first time here. We can get a card here." The waiter didn't laugh at Ning Shu. He let Ning Shu enter his information and get a points card before paying the bill. Ning Shu looked around. There were many people in the restaurant, and the food was different. It was as if the restaurant had everything. Ning Shu noticed that the 3 women sitting at the table next to him were looking at him. They were whispering to each other, 2333, did I do something wrong? Ning Shu was speechless. He felt like a monkey being stared at. They said you're ugly. 2333 said. Ning Shu stared blankly at him, speechless. How am I ugly? In any case, I am still a delicate and pretty little beauty. Ning Shu was most proud of his hair. When he was alive, he didn't even have eyebrows because he had chemotherapy every day. But after he died, he found that his hair was very soft. Now that he was called ugly, Ning Shu turned to look at the 3 women. How beautiful could they be? Ning Shu looked at the 3 women. Their skin was so white and tender. Ning Shu touched his face. It felt like jelly and very tender. They were either very pure or very seductive. Either way, they were all beauties. Their eyes were like water, and their legs were white. They were very beautiful. Compared to them, he was ugly. Ning Shu swallowed his anger. They will more or less increase their charm. Your charm is too low. When your charm is high, it will slowly change according to your facial features and body characteristics. 2333 said, your charm of 3 points is indeed too low. Ning Shu scratched his head. He didn't have enough attribute points. To ensure his safety and prevent accidents from happening in the mission world, he had to increase his combat strength. 500 IQ was the minimum. He only had 100 IQ. At this stage, Ning Shu felt that he was too weak. It would be a waste to add points to his charm. Charm was secondary. After all, he had to enter the body of the original owner to complete the mission. No one could see what he looked like. Attribute points should be added in more important places. When the dishes were served, Ning Shu looked at the delicious dishes. She tore off the roast duck leg and took a bite. It tasted great and left a fragrant taste in her mouth. After swallowing it, the food seemed to disappear. She couldn't digest things in her spirit state. She didn't know where the food went. It was quite amazing. Chapter 472. Ning Shu hadn't eaten so happily in a long time. As he chewed on the roast duck, he saw the three women staring at him. Ning Shu, what's wrong now? It's fine if they say she's ugly, but what's wrong with them now? They're saying you came out of nowhere and haven't eaten meat before, 2333 said. Ning Shu. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen me eat before? Ning Shu said unhappily. You eat your desserts, I'll eat my roast duck. The three women snorted and chatted on their own. They didn't even want to talk to Ning Shu, probably because they thought Ning Shu was too weak. You don't know, I met a weirdo in a world. I was doing one difficult mission after another and was too tired, so I wanted to go to a low-level realm to do something easier. A woman with enchanting eyebrows and a lazy aura exuded from her body said. Her soul looked very strong, just like a real body. This woman was stronger than the other two. Ning Shu listened and chewed on the roast duck leg. He pricked up his ears to listen to what they were saying. Sister Wei, what happened to you? One of the women asked. In that low-level realm, I failed my mission. If I didn't have something to pay for my life, I would have been fucking killed. When the seductive woman talked about this, her expression was very bad. I met a stubborn man. No matter how I flirted, he didn't like me. His favorability was always at 0, and it didn't change at all. I even thought he was a robot. The seductive woman sat up straight, her brows furrowed. She looked very speechless. This. The other two women looked at each other and laughed. Also, there's a man that your sister Wei can't understand. I'm afraid you didn't try your best. You're about to become a high-level mission taker. Didn't try my best. I really did try my best. The enchanting woman waved her hand. The more I think about it, the more I can't figure it out. The more I think about it, the more depressed I get. I ran to that plane again, and in the end, that man actually fell in love with the person I entrusted him with, his own fiancée. When I was here, he didn't like me. After I left, he fell in love with me, and the one he likes is the original owner. The enchanting woman was very angry. Obviously, that man insulted her charm, making her angry. Ning Shu was speechless. Why did it sound so familiar? Ning Shu looked at the woman. This woman couldn't be Song Ning. She had become the CEO, and Song Ning's body had become a mission enforcer. Ning Shu didn't expect to meet her here. He looked at her. She was really beautiful and enchanting. Images of her flirting with men appeared in his mind. Of course, Ning Shu did not dare to run over and say that she was the CEO. He couldn't do such a stupid thing. As Ning Shu ate, she pricked up her ears to hear what they were talking about. Sister Wei, what are you going to do? At that time, I wanted to take him down. This time, my entrusted person directly became the female lead, An. It's better to use the female lead's halo to capture the male lead. Ning Shu's hand trembled, and he almost dropped his chopsticks. But the female lead, An, was already married to the supporting male lead. So messy. What happened in the end? The other two asked curiously. Ning Shu was also curious about the result. The enchanting woman waved her hand and clicked her tongue. Men are all the same. In the end, it was so easy to get her. In the end, the male and female leads got married, and the fiancé became cannon fodder. When she said this, the enchanting woman shrugged her shoulders and took a sip of coffee. We knew that no one can escape from Sister Wei's hands. Teach us a little later. The two women looked at the woman called Sister Wei with admiration. Sister Wei waved her hand and said lightly, "Every man likes a woman to love him wholeheartedly. Men are cheap. They don't care if you're too good to them. For words, loosen the reins only to grasp them better. Once you're in the role, the other party will naturally think that you really love him. Don't worry about men. They can be used to fill the emptiness. There are too many men in the world. Why can't men be stallions and women can't be free? Women can still be free and unrestrained." Sister Wei said lightly. Ning Shu drank a mouthful of soup and stood up to leave. He left the restaurant and let out a long sigh. Then he wandered around the city and learned about the city. Ning Shu was not in a good mood. He said to 2333, "Let's go back." "Okay." Ning Shu returned to the system space in a flash. He had a lot of doubts in his heart. He said to 2333, "I already helped Gong Luo get rid of the plot's control. Why did she still go and use Anwan's body to bring the plot back to square one? Moreover, Gong Luo and Song Ning already had a good ending. Now that Sister Wei, because she suffered a setback because of him, wanted to regain her face and went back to seduce Gong Luo. And it was Anwan who was already married. Then Gong Luo took her wife. At least in the plot, Gong Luo took Anwan's virginity. Now Gong Luo's situation was even worse than in the plot. So it was wrong for her to resist Sister Wei. God, it was so messy. Gong Luo already had a happy future. Why did she have to cross the line and tie Gong Luo and Anwan together again? I've said it before. Every mission taker has their own way of doing missions. The natural law of that world is to let the male lead be together. It's not wrong for you to counterattack for Gong Luo. It's also not wrong for her to bring the plot back to square one. Just follow your heart. If Gong Luo and Anwan get together again in that world, it doesn't have much to do with you. Gong Luo couldn't control his own heart. You helped him counterattack once. The second time, he lost himself in the charm of a mission taker. This is something that can't be helped, 2333 said. Ning Shu wiped her face. Even a woman like her couldn't resist this kind of charm, let alone a man. Ning Shu only just realized that beauty and charm were also weapons, weapons that could make people addicted and happy. Therefore, Ning Shu decided that she would recite the clear heart mantra more and cultivate her heart to resist the temptation of the outside world. This time it was a woman. If it was a man next time, a man with unparalleled charm was flirting with her like this, Ning Shu felt that she might not be able to control herself. However, Ning Shu still felt that Sister Wei was doing this for her own selfish reasons. She wanted to break up Gong Luo and Song Ning, who were about to get married, just to prove her own charm. Paying too much attention to these things would weaken one's heart. Ning Shu was very satisfied with her appearance. Maybe one day she could become beautiful, not now when even surviving was difficult. There was no need to pay attention to the details. Ning Shu felt that Gong Luo was a smart person. When the mission taker left, the dazzling and charming aura would disappear from the mission taker. That was the mission takers, not the mission takers. Moreover, everyone's personality was different. She hoped that Gong Luo could see the clues. If Gong Luo really fell in love, it wouldn't be with Anwan. It would be with the mission taker in Anwan's body. Chapter 473. Ning Shu didn't dwell on Gong Luo's matter. Everyone had their own fate. Ning Shu sat on the sofa and began to meditate and cultivate her soul. When she was almost done with her cultivation, she watered the potted plants. Although these potted plants would never wither and would always be like this, Ning Shu still wanted to water them. After reading for a while, Ning Shu thought that one day, he would be able to finish reading all the books on this bookshelf. At least he would be able to get the title of erudite. Time didn't pass in the system space. Ning Shu put down the book after he finished reading. He then went to the exchange shop to exchange for fasting pills, water, medicine, and antidote pills. When everything was ready, Ning Shu said to 2333, "Let's go do the quest." Okay. Ning Shu suddenly felt dizzy. When his soul merged with his body, all the hair on his body stood up. His muscles were stiff, and his heart was pounding non-stop. It was very dangerous. Ning Shu opened his eyes instantly. Before he could check his surroundings, he saw a big tiger pouncing towards him. It had the aura of an animal. Ning Shu stabbed the thing in his hand into the tiger's eye. This body was also very agile. A black sword accurately pierced the tiger's eye. Ning Shu twisted the sword with all his might. Hot blood spurted out. The tiger roared, twitched, and died. When the tiger died, Ning Shu fell to the ground and panted. He looked around. This was a carved stone house. He was locked in a metal cage. There was only him and a tiger in the cage. Obviously, someone wanted him to fight this tiger. The stone door opened, and a man in black walked in. Ning Shu looked at him. Seeing the bun on his head, he knew that this quest was set in ancient times. The man's aura was cold. There was a scar on his face that ran through his entire face, making him look very cold and dark. This time is not bad. It took less time than last time. The man said. His voice was a little hoarse and cold. Listening to him, it felt like a snake hissing and flicking its tongue. It was very uncomfortable. When this body saw this person, a feeling of awe and fear welled up in its heart. Ning Shu didn't accept the plot at this moment. She just said yes. You have to speed up your training. Master has a task for you, the man said. Yes. The man glanced at Ning Shu. His voice was firm and sinister as he said, "Remember, you are loyal to the third prince. Our master decides whether we live or die. What we need to do is to follow his orders. Even if it costs us our lives, we must complete the mission." Was this brainwashing? Before Ning Shu could react, he blurted out, "Yes." The man nodded in satisfaction. Just rest for a while. There will be a new test later. After saying that, he turned around and left. Ning Shu simply lay down and began to accept the plot. The original owner was called 11. He was a nameless orphan. The reason he was called 11 was because there was a code name of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 10. The people here did not have names, only code names. This base hidden deep in the mountains was the place where the third prince trained his men of sacrifice. The original owner was a man of sacrifice. He had lived here for as long as he could remember. The training here was very cruel. Everyone climbed out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. They were trained to be ready to die for their master, the third prince. 11 did not reject this kind of life. She was an orphan and had been influenced by this kind of life. Her way of life was like this. 11's mission this time was very simple. It was to protect a girl called Shangguan Qingro. This Shangguan Qingro was the girl that the third prince liked. Shangguan Qingro was the daughter of the Minister of Rites. She was beautiful and cute. She was straightforward and not pretentious. Actually, this Shangguan Qingro was a transmigrator. She knew how to dance on horseback and sing things like, "You are my little apple, no matter how much I love you, it's never too much." These unique songs and dances were very attractive. The first person to notice Shangguan Qingro was the third prince. The third prince had a very good impression of this special girl. Shangguan Qingro was not an ancient person. She did not care about the boundaries between men and women. After getting familiar with the third prince, Shangguan Qingro would often visit the prince's residence. The two of them would often go sightseeing. They were like a couple. Very quickly, Shangguan attracted the attention of the other princes. The third prince knew that the fight for the throne was very dangerous, so he found a woman of sacrifice to protect Shangguan. Shangguan maintained a good relationship with all the princes. It could be said that they were more than friends but not yet lovers. Even the little princes in the palace liked to play with her. These little princes were at the age where they liked to play. Shangguan always had something interesting to play with. The third prince really liked Shangguan. He wanted Shangguan to belong to him wholeheartedly. But Shangguan was a modern person. She was an independent and advanced person. How could she endure such a tyrannical request without any freedom? She also had her own social circle and friends. Shangguan originally had a good impression of this noble man. But she could not stand his tyranny. In the end, Shangguan married the fifth prince. The two of them were very loving. The fifth prince did not take in any concubines because of Shangguan. The third prince looked at the happy couple and smiled coldly. He became even more hostile towards the fifth prince. He did not hold back when he attacked Shangguan. Every time Shangguan was about to be harmed, she would be saved by someone, turning the misfortune into a blessing. The third prince wanted to destroy Shangguan. I love you, you have to love me. If you don't love me, I'll kill you. Since I can't have you, I'll destroy you. Then I'll hug your corpse and spend the rest of my life with you. In this battle for the throne, the third prince lost. The fifth prince ascended the throne. Shangguan became the empress. But there was still no concubine in the harem. The third prince was finally killed by the fifth prince. From then on, the emperor and the empress lived happily together. The original owner's wish, to not let his master die. Shi could not understand. His master was so good to Shangguan. He gave her everything she wanted. The only condition was for Shangguan to be loyal to his master. Shangguan was very close to the other princes, but she said they were friends. Shi thought that his master was so good. He even said that his master did not understand love and only knew how to rob. Ning Shu sighed. Look, this is a loyal servant. When he was alive, he risked his life for his master. After he died, he even gave his soul to save his master. How successful was this brainwashing? Ning Shu did not know if Shi had feelings for the third prince or if he was just purely loyal. But this mission? Damn it, she was only a death warrior. How could she influence the fight between these important people? How could she influence the change of a dynasty? She had no right to speak in front of the third prince. She only needed the third prince to give the order, then she would charge forward with her sword. Ning Shu. Chapter 474. Death soldiers did not need to speak, they only needed to wave their swords, and could do anything for their master. Even if there was a cliff in front of them, if their master said to jump, they would jump without hesitation. Ning Shu carefully considered this mission in his heart. If he transmigrated into the emperor, he could directly give the throne to the third prince. The third prince, who had become the emperor, could easily recruit Shangguan into the palace. The third prince also liked to seek death. To put it bluntly, if he was not satisfied, he would be in pain, and if he was satisfied, he would be bored. Ning Shu analyzed 11's wish. She said she would not let her master die, so she wanted to change the third prince's fate of being killed. As for whether the third prince could become the emperor, it had nothing to do with her. But if the third prince did not become the emperor, he would be killed in the end. Especially with his death-seeking attitude of using every possible method to kill the female lead, he would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. In fact, the third prince should have been a scumbag of an ex. It was not that he did not love him, but that he loved him too much. It was tiring to have such a master. Forget it, I'll just take it one step at a time. Ning Shu sat in the cage and began to practice her ultimate martial arts. Since she was a death soldier, the higher her martial arts, the better. That way, her chances of survival would be higher. This was a profession where she was ready to die at any time. Ning Shu did not want to die during a mission. If she failed, she would be killed. Luckily, this world had a lot of spiritual energy, so it was easy to practice her ultimate martial arts. Hearing the sound of a heavy stone door opening, Ning Shu stopped her practice and stood up. The man with the scar on his face from before walked in. Ning Shu knew that he was the leader of this training base, codename 1, who had carried out many missions. Now go do the next mission. 1 was very cold to Ning Shu. Ning Shu nodded and followed 1 out of the stone door. She saw 1 open another stone door. Go in. This is your second mission. You have to kill all the prey inside. 1 pushed Ning Shu into the cave and closed the stone door behind her. As soon as Ning Shu entered, he smelled a disgusting fishy smell and the hissing sound of the snake's tongue. Looking around, there were many snakes. These snakes were entwined together and crawling in the stone room. Ning Shu got goosebumps all over. Fuck, this was the most disgusting thing. Moreover, these snakes were of different colors and were all poisonous. Actually, it probably wanted to kill her. How could she kill so many snakes? Ning Shu cut the snake that was crawling towards her in half. Ning Shu continuously swam towards her. Ning Shu activated her chi and stepped on the wall. She flew a few steps and found an open space where there were no snakes. Now, not only did they have to kill these snakes, they also had to prevent being bitten by these poisonous snakes. Ning Shu regretted not exchanging for realgar powder. In the future, he would definitely exchange for realgar powder. Ning Shu killed these snakes. The snakes were cut in half, and their severed limbs kept writhing. In the end, they died. The smell in the stone room became more and more unpleasant. The fishy smell of the snakes and the sticky stench of blood made people suffocate. Ning Shu looked at these snakes. He did not know when he would be able to kill all of them. He waited at the door for Ning Shu to complete his task. After a long time, he opened the stone door. Ning Shu had just killed the last snake. He looked at the snake corpses in the stone room. His face was expressionless. He did not praise Ning Shu. He said, "You have passed the second test. There is still one more test." Ning Shu was very tired. He could not even lift his arm. He said to Yi, "Can I rest first? I am very tired." Yi glanced at Ning Shu. The last test was very simple. You do not need to rest. Very simple. Ning Shu followed Yi into the stone room. This stone room was very clean. There was a stone bed. On the stone bed, there was a swaddling cloth. Ning Shu walked in to take a look. There was a baby in the swaddling cloth. At this moment, a pair of black eyes were looking around. Bubbles were coming out of his mouth. When he saw Ning Shu, he made a babbling sound. When he opened his mouth, there were no teeth. There were only pink gums. Ning Shu looked at the swaddling cloth. There were many patches on it. At first glance, he knew that this was a child from a poor family. Ning Shu had a bad feeling in his heart. He looked at Yi. Yi's face was cold. He said to Ning Shu, "This is your last test. Kill this child." Ning Shu's heart tightened. Why? This child has nothing to do with us. As soon as she looked at Ning Shu, her eyes suddenly became fierce. Are you the one who should say that? We are the sword in the master's hand. As long as the master gives the order, no matter who the target is, we must kill. Even if it is a baby. Kill him. He pointed at the child on the bed. This is your last task. If you do not complete this task, you are not qualified. You cannot be assigned tasks by the master. Perhaps the baby sensed danger, or perhaps Yi's voice scared him. He began to cry at the top of his voice. The stone room was filled with the child's cries. Ning Shu's palms were sweating as he held the sword hilt. His heart sank into an unprecedented struggle and confusion. If he did not kill this child, he would not be able to leave this base. What about his task? She would be obliterated. But this child had no enmity with him. He did not even know anything. He was ignorant. This was a life. Ning Shu did not feel any psychological pressure when he killed those tigers and snakes. But now he had to kill a person. A person who had no enmity with him. Ning Shu's whole body was covered in cold sweat. The cold sweat on his forehead flowed into his eyelids. His eyes were sore and painful. But Ning Shu did not have the heart to rub his eyes. Was he going to kill an innocent person for his task? Using an innocent baby in exchange for his own life? Could he do this? Yes, no, 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 no. Ning Shu felt unprecedented confusion and helplessness. This was a situation he had never encountered before in his previous missions. What should he do? This was using this life to complete his task. But this child did not know anything and had never done anything to hurt him. Was he going to do this? Ning Shu could seek justice for the person who had entrusted him, but this child had nothing to do with the task. What should he do? Killing an innocent person like this, and an ignorant baby at that? The baby was not to blame, and it was still an innocent child. Ning Shu's mind was in a mess. Her mind was a mess. Ning Shu felt like her spirit was about to collapse. She was confused and confused. Should he do anything to survive? Should he do anything to survive? He looked at Ning Shu with cold eyes and said, "You just need to raise your hand and stab the sword into this child's heart. This is the simplest task. Remember, you are a kamikaze soldier." Ning Shu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. A kamikaze soldier. This kind of training was simply inhumane. This kind of training was to eliminate the pity and sympathy in human nature. It was to turn people into machines without humanity. Under the throne of an emperor were piles of bones. Stepping on these bones to create a staircase, step by step, one ascended to the throne. Chapter 475. As long as the sword pierced through, her persistence would vanish and she would no longer be bound. If it happened once, there would be a second time. If it happened too many times, she would become numb and would no longer be entangled like this. Ning Shu gripped the hilt of the sword so tightly that the veins on the back of her hand popped out. "Kill him, kill him." A cold voice rang in her ears. It was either you die or I die. If the person in front of her was her enemy, Ning Shu would raise her sword and fight without hesitation. However, this was an unarmed baby who had no enmity with her. 2333, what should I do? Ning Shu asked 2333 for help. 2333 was silent for a moment and asked, "What do you want to do?" "I don't want to kill him." After saying this, Ning Shu's body relaxed and her mind became clear. She didn't want to kill this child. This child had nothing to do with her. The system was silent. 2333, please help me. Ning Shu saw 2333 was silent and begged. "There's a fake death pill in the system store. I'll get one for you. But don't report me. This is against the rules. I'm risking being formatted to help you. This is the last time. If I'm found out, both of us will be wiped out," 2333 said. Ning Shu was happy, "Thank you 2333. Don't worry, I will exchange for these things in advance." A pill appeared in Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu's floating heart suddenly calmed down. It seemed that in the future, not only would she need to exchange for survival necessities, she would also need to exchange for this kind of thing. Only by exchanging for something in advance could she use it in the quest. Have you thought about it? Ning Shu asked, with your mentality, you can't be a death warrior. You don't have to go on this quest. I can do it. Ning Shu quickly walked to the bedside and covered the wailing baby's mouth. Then, under everyone's gaze, she stabbed the sword into the baby's left chest and pulled it out, leaving behind a trail of blood. The stone room that was noisy just a moment ago was now quiet. Only Ning Shu and Yi's breathing could be heard. He glanced at Ning Shu and walked over. He placed his hand on the baby's pulse and placed it on the baby's nose. After waiting for a while and confirming that the baby was dead, he said to Ning Shu, "Okay." Ning Shu asked, "Can I bury him?" When he looked at Ning Shu, his eyes were very sharp. Finally, he grunted. Only then did Ning Shu slowly pick up the dead child from the stone bed and leave the stone room. "Wait a moment," said Yi. Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat. He turned around and asked calmly, "Is there anything else? Come back quickly. Come with me to see the master." Yi said. Ning Shu nodded and quickly left with the baby in his arms. After leaving the huge cave, he saw a forest. Ning Shu quickly ran into the forest. He found some herbs and put them in his mouth to chew. He untied the baby's clothes. There was a sword wound on the left side of the baby's chest. Ning Shu put the herbs in his mouth on his chest to stop the bleeding. 2333 said that the baby's heart was on the right side. That was why she dared to stab the baby on the left side. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. There were only endless mountains nearby. There was no one living here. What should he do with the baby? It was impossible for her to walk out of the mountains and find a family to adopt the baby. Yi was still waiting for him. There was no time. Damn, why was it so annoying? Moreover, the effect of the fake death medicine was about to wear off. Ning Shu's heart was annoyed. He chewed the herbs in his mouth and applied them to the baby. However, the baby's bleeding finally stopped. He took a fasting pill and stuffed it into the baby's mouth. The fasting pill turned into a warm stream and flowed into the baby's mouth. Ning Shu didn't know what to do with the baby. He couldn't just leave him here. He would definitely be taken away by a wild beast. Only death awaited. She put in so much effort, but in the end, he still died. Sigh. Ning Shu carried the baby and stepped on a tree trunk. He stood on a branch and looked at the forest. He saw a female wolf passing by under the tree. Behind the female wolf were a few wolf pups. Ning Shu had an idea. He quietly stole one of the wolf pups. He stained the baby with the wolf's scent and followed the wolf to the wolf's den. Ning Shu could only try. He just didn't know if the female wolf was willing to raise the baby. He fed the baby anti-inflammatory and anti-fever pills. When the female wolf left the den, Ning Shu placed the baby in the den. He then stood guard not far away. If the female wolf hurt the baby, Ning Shu would have to kill her. When the female wolf returned, she saw an unknown creature in the den. Her nose kept sniffing the baby's clothes. She even bit the clothes with her mouth. It seemed that she didn't intend to eat the baby. Ning Shu stood guard for a while. Seeing that the female wolf ignored the baby and didn't hurt him, he sighed in relief. That was all he could do. Seeing that it was getting late, Ning Shu decided to go back. When he returned to the cave, Yi was waiting for Ning Shu. He gave Ning Shu a set of clothes and told her to freshen up and prepare to go to the capital to see his master. Ning Shu took her clothes and went to the stream to take a bath. She put on her clothes and was given a set of women's clothes. She looked very capable. After tying her hair into a ponytail with a rope, Ning Shu bent down to look at the water. He wanted to see what the original owner of the body looked like. She was very ordinary. Her appearance was not good. Her facial features were very ordinary. She was not eye-catching at all in a crowd. After tidying up, Ning Shu returned to the cave. He took Ning Shu to the capital. It took more than half a day just to get out of the deep forest. Ning Shu felt lucky. Fortunately, she didn't take the baby out of the forest to find him. How far did she have to go? Out of the forest, there was a man leading 2 horses on the side of the road. When he saw Yi and Ning Shu coming, he gave the horses to Yi. Yi gave a horse to Ning Shu. Then the 2 of them quickly went in the direction of the capital. When they arrived at the city gate, Yi got off the horse. Seeing that Ning Shu was still sitting on the horse, he said coldly, "Get off. Don't ride into the city. It's easy to attract attention." Ning Shu got off the horse and followed into the city. The capital was very prosperous. There were all kinds of shops and stalls. The people on the street were very particular about their clothes. Ning Shu held the sword in his arms and followed Yi to the backyard of the 3rd prince's residence. He entered from the backyard. He was too vigilant. Ning Shu silently remembered it in his heart. The housekeeper told Yi and Ning Shu that the 3rd prince was receiving a guest and asked them to wait for a while. Yi turned to Ning Shu and asked, "Do you know how to salute when you see the master? Fist salute, knee bend, or directly kneel on the ground?" Ning Shu shook his head. He didn't know. "Kneel on one knee and fist salute," said. Wasn't this the posture of a proposal? The housekeeper came out and asked Ning Shu to go in. He didn't go in and asked Ning Shu to go in by himself. Ning Shu tidied his clothes and walked into the room. "Oh my, I'm a little nervous." As soon as he walked into the room, he saw a man and a woman at the desk. They seemed to be drawing something. When Ning Shu saw the 2 of them, he felt that his eyes were about to be healed. Because the 2 of them were really too beautiful. The woman leaned on the desk, bent over and supported her chin with her hand, watching the man write something. What an immortal couple. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.